The day I arrived in this world, I was about to be sent off as a camp woman. I woke up at a military outpost on the far edge of the empire, a harsh, freezing borderland caught between enemy tribes. The sun was burning down on cracked earth, and I was standing in a dusty field with 17 other women. We all wore rough prisoner clothes. Our hair was messy, our faces pale. We looked like sheep waiting to be slaughtered. Up on a high platform, an officer in iron armor read out the emperor's order. Our old master, a high-ranking official, had been caught stealing from the court. All of us, his servants, were now slaves. We would be given as wives to soldiers who earned merit in battle. Any woman not picked would be sent to the back of the camp to serve the troops. Everyone knew what the back of the camp really meant. Those women would be used and thrown away. Most wouldn't survive a year. But becoming a soldier's proper wife was different. You'd have a name, a place, maybe even a chance to be free one day if your husband moved up in rank. Two paths. Two completely different fates. The other women were shaking, staring desperately at the 12 soldiers lined up in front of us. But I stayed calm. I had my reasons. I'm not really from this world. I came from a ruined future, an apocalypse, where I worked behind the lines at a survival base. During a mission, an explosion killed me. Then I opened my eyes here, inside this body. The girl who owned it before was a top-ranked maid from the official's household. She made it all the way to this border camp, but a bad fever took her life. And I slipped in. It's a rough start, a slave at the edge of nowhere. But I've been given a second chance at life, and I won't waste it. The apocalypse taught me 2 rules. First, strength keeps you alive. Second, follow the right person. I looked over the soldiers and locked onto the man at the front. He was huge, a head taller than the rest, maybe 6'3". Dark bronze skin, a hard jaw, wide shoulders, thick back. His left arm was wrapped in a bloody bandage, and old scars covered his neck and arms. But he stood steady, breathing even, full of a wild, fearless energy. In my old world, this kind of man was the best partner you could find. Strong, tough, fast to heal. I don't care about a pretty face or sweet talk. Can a pretty face stop a blade? Can sweet words fight off a beast? I like big, fierce men. This one was perfect. His name was Xiaozheng, and he had the highest war merit of all 12 soldiers. But he didn't even glance at us. He looked bored, almost annoyed. To him, we were just skinny, weak women who couldn't hold a hoe or earn our own food. His family was already struggling. Another mouth to feed would only make things worse. The man beside him, Shenfeng, was smarter in a sneaky way. He had the second highest merit, and his eyes were already calculating. He spotted the prettiest woman among us and wanted her. A well-raised servant from a noble house would make a fine wife. But Xiaozheng got first pick. So Shenfeng played a little trick. He stepped forward and said loudly, "Old Xiao, since you're clearly not interested, why don't I go first and show you how it's done?" Everyone looked at Xiaozheng. He didn't even blink. Whatever. Go ahead. He only cared about one thing: feeding his family and earning enough glory to free them from their low-class soldier status. To him, a wife was just trouble and wasted food. Shenfeng smiled inside. He thought Xiaozheng was a fool who only knew how to fight. The other women glanced at Xiaozheng and quickly looked away. He was terrifying. With arms like that, he could snap a neck with one hand. But I kept my eyes on him. He was exactly what I needed. All the women turned their eyes to Shenfeng, the second-rank soldier. He had a calm face, sharp but not scary, and looked like the kind of man who'd be easy to live with. Every woman wanted him to pick her. Among them, Su Lan stood out the most. She was the prettiest of us all, and she knew it. She held her chin high, showing off her best angle, determined to be chosen by the best man available. The officer called Shenfeng to pick first since Xiaozheng had given up his turn. Without hesitation, Shenfeng pointed straight at Su Lan. "This one. She looks proper. I'll take her." Su Lan acted modest, but I could see the joy bursting inside her. She even glanced at me with a smug little look, as if to say, "See? I always win." She probably thought I'd end up in the back camp with the rest of the leftovers. I didn't care about her. My eyes were locked on one man only, Xiao Zheng. He stood at the front like a tower of iron. But while every other soldier was checking us out, whispering and comparing, he didn't move at all. He wasn't even looking at us, like this whole thing had nothing to do with him. My heart sank a little. If he refused to pick anyone, I'd lose my best chance at survival. So I waited. I kept my head low and pulled in my presence, a trick I learned in the apocalypse. Stay invisible. Wait for the right moment. One by one, the other soldiers stepped past Xiao Zheng and made their picks. Women scrambled forward the second their names were called, terrified the soldiers might change their minds. Within minutes, 11 men had chosen. Only Xiao Zheng was left. And 7 of us remained, including me. The others were white as ghosts. We all knew what came next for the unchosen. The officer's voice cut through the silence. Xiao Zheng, your turn.
Pick one.
Now, he didn't move. Then his deep voice rumbled out. General, I don't need a woman. The whole field went quiet. The officer's face darkened. What did you say? Give me grain and silver instead. I can't afford to feed another person. I understood his reason even then. His father died in battle 5 years ago. He was supporting his widowed mother, a 15-year-old brother, and a 13-year-old sister, all on one soldier's pay. And the man ate like a beast. 20 steamed buns in one sitting, and still hungry. He wasn't being cruel. He just couldn't see how adding another mouth would do anything but make everyone starve faster. The officer slammed his authority down. This is an imperial reward. You don't get to refuse, but Xiao Zheng just stood there, frowning harder. Despair spread through the remaining women like poison. That's when I knew I couldn't wait anymore. If I stayed quiet, I was dead. I stepped forward. Every eye on that field snapped to me. A slave. Walking out on her own? Nobody had ever done that. I didn't look at the officer. I looked straight at Xiao Zheng. I don't need you to feed me, I said. Everyone froze. I kept going. I can farm. I can cook. I can run a household. I won't cost you any food and I won't drag you down. Then I said the part one really meant. And you're strong. If I stay with you, I'm safe. For 1 second, total silence. Then the whole field exploded with laughter. This girl's got guts. Straight to the point. Xiao Zheng, you hit the jackpot. She's better than all those crying ones put together. Come on, old Xiao, she's throwing herself at you. What are you waiting for? Maybe she'll actually cook enough to fill that bottomless stomach of yours. The laughter was rough but warm. No real meanness in it. Xiao Zheng looked down at me. I'm small, thin, probably looked like I'd snap in a strong wind. But he stared at my eyes for a long moment. I stood straight. No blushing, no fear, no flattery. I just told him the truth. I picked him because he was built like a wall. I could see the refusal forming on his lips. But somehow it got stuck. The officer seized the moment.
Done.
Xiao Zheng, take her home and get her settled. Then he glared at him. Stop dragging your feet. Even a woman is more decisive than you. Xiao Zheng was quiet for a few seconds. Then 2 words. Keep up. I nodded and fell in behind him. His broad back blocked most of the wind as we walked. I watched his shadow stretch ahead of us, and a small smile crossed my face. I bet right. As for eating enough, I glanced down at my hand. A faint green glow flickered at my fingertips. Food wasn't going to be a problem. Behind us, Su Lan stood beside Shinfeng, watching me with a mocking smile. She probably thought I was shameless for speaking up like that. She figured Xiao Zheng was a rough, low-class brute, nothing like her refined husband. She thought I'd suffer.
We'd see about that.
About 15 minutes later, we reached the military village, the place where soldiers' families lived just behind the camp. It wasn't much to look at. Rows of low mud brick houses with old straw and broken tiles on top. No paved roads, just dirt and gravel that kicked up dust with every step. The air smelled like firewood and livestock, mixed with the dry, dusty scent that belongs to this borderland. This wasn't the capital with its grand houses and painted walls. Life here was rough and simple. Men fought. Women farmed. Every family's survival depended on military pay and rations. I followed Xiaozheng into the village and started scanning everything out of habit. Within a few steps, I'd already mapped out the basics. The well sat in the center of the village. The grain drying area was on the east side. Some families had broken weapon scraps piled outside their doors, scavenged iron from the battlefield. Out here, that stuff was worth money. Along the road, a few elm trees and sea buckthorn bushes grew, but they looked half-dead, dry trunks, barely any leaves. I noted all of it quietly. If I was going to survive, I needed to know what resources were around. The moment we walked in, a group of military wives hanging laundry stopped and stared. Well, Hunterman Xiao brought home a wife. She's so skinny, though. That waist looks like it'd snap if you squeezed it. Can she even work? Hope she's not some pampered lady. They were blunt, but not really mean. Border women talk rough. That's just how they are. Xiaozheng's brow tightened and he walked faster, clearly wanting to escape the attention. I kept my pace steady. I've heard far worse than this. A few comments were nothing. I used the time to keep observing. Which yard had a chicken coop? Which house had firewood stacked up? All resources worth remembering. Soon, Xiaozheng stopped in front of a house. The gate was made of crooked wooden boards. The walls were packed yellow earth, cracked and peeling in spots. The straw roof had turned black with age, looked like a strong wind could pull it apart. He pushed the gate open. Inside the yard, a few bundles of dry firewood in the corner, a broken wooden bucket, and some clothes hanging on the wall, each one covered in patches on top of patches. One glance told me everything I needed to know. This family was truly poor. Then footsteps came from inside, and a woman pushed through the door curtain. She was around 40, short, with a face roughened and reddened by the wind. Her clothes were old and coarse, but washed clean. She had sharp eyes and a no-nonsense look, the type you don't want to mess with. This was Wang Guixiang, Xiaozheng's mother. She saw her son first and smiled. "You're back?" Then her eyes landed on me. She froze. "This?" "Assigned by the government," Xiaozheng said. "For words." That was it. She blinked twice, then grabbed her son and hissed in a low voice, thinking I couldn't hear. "You big fool. You actually brought a woman home? Do you not see what our situation is? What are you going to feed her with? Look at her, skinny as a stick. Looks like she's never worked a day in her life. Couldn't you have asked for grain instead? Or silver? Even half a pig head would have been better. What are we supposed to do? Worship her like a goddess?" "Imperial order," Xiaozheng replied flatly. Couldn't refuse. Wang Guixiang swallowed her next words. With the drought up north hitting the border region too, complaining wouldn't change anything. She took a breath and tried to console herself. At least her oldest son, who should have been married years ago, finally had a wife. Then she looked at me more carefully. I was thin, messy-haired, dirty-faced. My lips were pale. I didn't look healthy at all.
But she noticed something.
I wasn't crying. I wasn't whining. I wasn't cowering or begging. I just stood there, back straight, eyes calm.
She sighed. "Fine."
"Come inside. It's windy out here." That one sentence, "come inside," meant she'd accepted me. I felt a small wave of relief. Right then, footsteps came from outside the gate.
"Ma."
"We're back." A boy rushed in, maybe 15 or 16, already around 5'9", but with shoulders that hadn't filled out yet.
"Patch the cloth, carrying a bamboo basket."
Behind him came a thin little girl. The basket was empty. The boy started grumbling before he even looked up. "Couldn't find anything today. The outer hills are picked clean. Not even wild vegetable roots left." The girl sighed softly. I walked far to the east side too. Nothing. Then they both raised their heads, saw me, and stopped dead. "Big brother?" Xiaozheng didn't waste words. "This is your sister-in-law." Sister-in-law. Their eyes went wide. The boy, Xiao Jun, scratched his head nervously and introduced himself. Then he pointed to the girl behind him. Xiao Yu, 13 years old, small and skinny but with bright, curious eyes. She kept sneaking glances at me. "Hello, I'm Suhi," I said, and gave them a small smile. Wang Guixiang clapped her hands. "Enough standing around. Everyone inside. Lunch is ready, though it's just some dark flour cakes. We'll make do." I followed them through the door. For people in this family, living on one soldier's pay, with a drought squeezing the land dry, an empty basket from a morning of foraging, patched clothes, black flour cakes for lunch. This was my new home. Rock bottom. But I'd started from worse. And I had something none of them knew about yet. I looked down at my fingers, where that faint green glow had flickered earlier.
We'd be fine.
I followed the Xiao family into the main room. It was small, one old wooden table in the center, for short stools, the tabletop worn nearly white from years of use. Wang Guixiang brought out lunch, a basket of dark flour cakes and a pot of thin soup. The soup didn't even have a drop of oil floating in it. Little Xiao Yu's face lit up. "Ma, we have cakes today." Her mother shot her a look. "Hush. Your brother just came back from fighting. He needs to eat more." She pushed 2 cakes in front of Xiao Zheng, split 1 cake in half for Xiao Jun and Xiao Yu, then turned to me with a frown.
You
"Can eat coarse grain, right?" She was worried I'd be some picky city girl who'd turn her nose up at rough food. I almost laughed. In the apocalypse, I ate moldy scraps without blinking. A dark flour cake was a luxury. "I can eat it," I said quickly. She handed me 1 cake, and I thanked her. Xiao Zheng had already started. 1 bite, 2 bites, the first cake was gone. Then the second. Then the third. He ate fast but not sloppy, like a man who'd learned long ago that food disappears if you don't move quickly. The pile shrank before my eyes. Xiao Yu whispered, "Big brother's starving again." Wang Guixiang sighed. "He always is after a battle." She pulled out another cake and passed it over. I counted silently. 5 cakes, just like that. Looking at his massive frame, I understood completely. A body like that burns through food like firewood. If I wanted to keep this man strong, I needed to grow grain, a lot of it, and fast. He must have felt me watching, because he looked up. "You're not eating?" I dropped my head and bit into my cake. It was hard and rough, the bran scraping my tongue, tasting like nothing much at all. But I chewed without flinching. After 5 years of apocalypse rations, this was fine. Xiao Zheng glanced at me from the corner of his eye. I could tell he was surprised. A top made from a high official's house, eating coarse bread like it was nothing? He probably figured the road here had toughened me up. He didn't know the half of it. I reached for a second cake, then a third, then a fourth. The table went quiet. Xiao Yu poked her brother and whispered, "Second brother, look." Xiao Jun stared. After my 4th cake, I finally took a sip of soup.
sister-in-law.
"You eat a lot too," Xiao Yu blurted out. I paused, a little embarrassed. "I'm just extra hungry today." That was true. This body hadn't had a proper meal in days. And as someone with supernatural abilities, my appetite was always bigger than normal. I'd gotten carried away. Looking at Xiao Jun and Xiao Yu, who clearly hadn't eaten enough, I felt a stab of guilt. My first meal in this house, and I'd eaten their share. But I glanced down at my hand. A warmth pulsed in my fingertips. I could grow food. This wouldn't last. Wang Guixiang studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Good appetite is good. Means you're not as weak as you look." Then she glanced at her son, and back at me. "You two are a match, I'll say that. One bottomless pit. And one who could apparently keep up." By the time we finished, there wasn't a crumb left on the table. I was maybe 6 or 7 parts full. The food had almost no flavor. The cakes were just hard and scratchy, the soup was water with a ghost of rice in it, and the few wild greens barely tasted like anything because there was almost no salt. But I ate every bite. 5 years of apocalypse life trained me never to waste a single grain. Still, this wasn't the apocalypse. This world had resources, they were just limited. I looked at my empty bowl and made myself a promise. I had the ability to change things, so I would. No more going hungry. I was going to improve this family's meals, and I was going to do it soon. Wang Guixiang stood up and started giving orders. She told Xiao Jun and Xiao Yu to clear the dishes, then pointed at Xiao Zheng. "You just got back from camp. Rest today." "I'm fine. I can." One glare from his mother shut him up. "Your wound isn't healed. Sit down." Then she looked at me, seeming unsure what to do. I was still wearing my ragged prisoner clothes. I didn't even have a change of clothing. "Wait here," she said, and disappeared into the back room. She came out carrying a neatly folded set of clothes, a light pink outfit, old but barely worn. The fabric was faded but clean, with a faint smell of soap nuts. Someone had been keeping this stored away carefully for a long time. She pushed it into my hands.
Here.
Take it. For me? I blinked. She glared. Who else? Then she grumbled. It's from when I was young. Just make do with it. Can't have people saying the Shao family's wife walks around looking like a beggar. The words were rough, but warmth spread through my chest. She coughed and added stiffly, a new bride coming through the door should have something decent to wear. Consider it your welcome gift. I like it very much, I said, smiling as I took the clothes. The fabric was soft under my fingers, old but cared for. I looked up at Wang Guixiang. Her voice was harsh, but her eyes gave her away. There was a flicker of reluctance in them, like parting with something precious. Thank you, Auntie. Thank me for what?
Your family now.
Go wash up and change. She waved her hand and walked out. I ran my thumb over the fabric gently. She'd kept this dress for years, never willing to give it away. It was probably saved for Xiao Yu's wedding day someday, and she gave it to me instead. I looked out at the yard. Wang Guixiang was in the kitchen, muttering about not having enough firewood. Xiao Jun was dumping dirt from his basket in the corner. Xiao Yu was squatting by the well, washing dishes with quick, practiced hands. Everyone was busy with something. No fighting, no complaining. Life was hard, but there was a steadiness to it, a warmth like the smell of wood smoke from a real home. In the apocalypse, I'd seen people turn on each other over half a piece of bread. Families betraying families. Partners stabbing each other in the back just to survive one more day. Compared to all that, the Shao family was poor, sure, but their hearts were good. The mother-in-law had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. The younger siblings were hardworking and honest, no scheming, no selfishness. And Xiao Zheng, quiet and rough, but clearly the kind of man who could hold things together when it mattered. For a chaotic borderland like this, landing in a family like this was actually pretty lucky. I looked down at the clothes in my hands and let myself smile, just a little. Being poor was fine. As long as the people stuck together, things could get better, and I could grow food. Things would change. A while later, Wang Guixiang heated water for me. She boiled 2 buckets of well water. Even though the drought up north had affected the border and it hadn't rained in a long time, the village's old well still held enough for daily use. But nobody wasted a drop. When the water was warm enough, she called out to Xiao Zheng, "Carry this to your room. Let the girl wash up and change clothes." Then she added, "You'll sleep in your brother's room for now." Xiao Zheng blinked. His mother rolled her eyes at him. "What are you standing there for? You two haven't had any ceremony. You can't just share a room right away." Their house had 3 rooms. She shared one with Xiao Yu, and the brothers each had one. Now that I was here, I'd take Xiao Zheng's room, and he'd squeeze in with Xiao Jun. "Fine," he said, and grabbed the bucket like it weighed nothing. He carried it into his room, a small space with a clay bed platform, a wooden table, and not much else. He'd lived here for over 10 years. But today was different. A woman was about to move in. A woman who was going to wash and change clothes in this very room. Something about that thought must have hit him because he suddenly paused. His ears turned red. He set the bucket down in the corner, and I walked in carrying the clothes. Our eyes met. He looked away fast, like he didn't know where to put his gaze. He coughed. "Water's ready. You can wash here." Then, like he'd just remembered, he added stiffly, "You'll stay in this room. I'll sleep at Xiao Jun's." "Okay," I said.
Simple as that.
My easy answer seemed to throw him off even more. The room went quiet for a second. I decided to clear the air. "You don't have to be so tense around me. We're husband and wife now, that's a fact. We should both get used to each other as quickly as we can." I meant it. I needed to fit into this family and this life, and I wanted them to accept me too, not treat me like a stranger they had to tiptoe around. Keeping distance wouldn't help anyone. I'd already gone through the original owner's memories and figured out the laws of this world. It was similar to the Ming Dynasty. Women like me, criminal slaves assigned as wives to military households, were called conscripted wives. It was a forced marriage designed to keep soldiers settled and producing children. I had no right to divorce. but the husband could cast me out. And if I got cast out, my options were ugly. Sent back to a government office, resold to another soldier, or thrown into the camp as a comfort woman. Since I couldn't change the marriage, I'd make the best of it. If we could live together peacefully, I was willing to put in the work. Xiao Zheng looked surprised. He stared at me for a moment like I was some kind of puzzle. Then something shifted in his expression, almost like respect. You're right. I'm just not used to it yet. I raised an eyebrow. Not used to having a wife? He paused, then nodded seriously. Never thought about it before. Me neither, I said, and a small laugh slipped out. In the apocalypse, marriage was a luxury nobody could afford. It meant nothing when every day might be your last. We looked at each other, and the air between us loosened just a little. Then his eyes drifted down to the pink outfit in my arms. That dress. Looks nice, he said. The words came out, and he looked just as startled as I was, like his mouth had moved on its own. I glanced at the clothes, then back at him. I'll put it on and show you later. His ears went bright red. The next second, this man, who could kill enemies on the battlefield without flinching, turned and walked out of the room so fast he was practically running. From the yard, I heard Xiao Jun's voice. Brother? Where are you rushing off to? Xiao Jun coughed. Mind your own business. I watched his retreating back and couldn't help smiling. This family might be even more interesting than I'd expected. I closed the door softly. The hot water was still sending up thin wisps of steam. I washed my face first, then looked at my reflection in the water. Without a mirror, it wasn't perfectly clear, but I could see the face well enough. It looked about 70 or 80% like my original face, the one I had before the apocalypse. The only difference was that the original owner's features were softer and gentler, while mine had a harder, sharper edge. What a coincidence, I murmured. Same name, nearly the same face. Maybe this girl was me in a past life. I smiled at the thought, then let it go. It didn't matter. From now on, this was my life, my body, my choices. The Sue he from the apocalypse was in charge now. The room was still hazy with steam. I wrung out my hair with a cloth, dried it slowly, and started changing. The outfit Wang Guixiang gave me was a full set, a short jacket with a narrow collar and a matching skirt pants in the same light pink. Nothing fancy, no heavy embroidery, but the stitching was tight and neat, with a simple little flower pattern along the edges. Whoever made this dress had put care into it. The fit was a touch loose, but it worked surprisingly well on me. I combed my damp hair with a wooden comb, twisted it into a simple half bun at the back, and pinned it with a smooth stick of wood. During the exile march, they'd taken everything from us. Not even a cheap hairpin left. A trim twig was all I had. Good enough. I pushed open the door and stepped out. A breeze swept through the yard, and sunlight slanted down from the edge of the roof. The pink hem of my skirt swayed a little in the wind. With the dust and grime washed away, my face was finally visible. Clean skin, clear features, bright eyes. I'm not the kind of beauty that turns heads across a room. My looks are quiet, more calm than flashy, like still water in the morning. Across the yard, Xiao Zheng was sitting on a low stool with a water ladle in his hand, about to take a drink. He heard the door and looked up. Then he froze. The ladle stopped in midair. He stared for several long seconds before snapping out of it. He coughed hard, nearly choking on nothing. I walked over quickly. What's wrong? He was quiet for a beat, then said very honestly, I almost didn't recognize you. Was I that ugly before? I teased. He answered dead seriously. Not ugly. Just too dirty. I nearly choked myself. This man really didn't know how to sugarcoat anything. He seemed to realize that wasn't the smoothest thing to say, so he tried to fix it. You look nice now. A pause. Then, as if rushing to make it better, he added, even nicer than my mother looked in that dress when she was young. I couldn't help laughing. You'd better hope your mother didn't hear that. He thought about it carefully and said, then I won't say it in front of her. I was speechless. What kind of response was that? This man looked terrifying on the outside, but inside, he was a little bit clueless. Honestly, it was kind of charming. I glanced down at the dress softly. This was your mother's wedding outfit, wasn't it? She really gave up something precious. It didn't matter. Someday I'd make sure she had plenty of new clothes. Xiaozheng nodded. He'd seen the dress a few times when he was little. His eyes drifted up to my hair, and he paused when he noticed the little wooden stick holding my bun together. I could tell what he was thinking. The soldiers who escorted us had stripped us clean. They didn't even leave us a simple wooden hairpin. He didn't say anything about it. He didn't need to. Just then, Wang Guixiang came out of the kitchen. She stopped when she saw me and looked me over properly for the first time. How'd you get this skinny? Didn't they feed you on the road? I shook my head.
Very little, she sighed.
Eat more from now on. The wind out here is harsh. You need some meat on your bones to handle it. She studied the dress on me, then gave a satisfied nod. Not bad. You actually look like a person now. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That was such a Wang Guixiang compliment. Thank you for lending me the clothes, Auntie. Lending?
Your family now.
It's yours. She waved her hand impatiently, like she'd said too much, and turned to bark at Xiaoyu. Are you going to stand there staring all day? Get those dishes put away. Xiaoyu had been gazing at me with wide eyes. She grinned. Sister-in-law is so pretty. Pretty nothing. Go work. Wang Guixiang snapped, then lowered her voice to Xiaozheng. Go rest. You haven't slept properly in days. I knew she wanted to make him chicken soup and proper food to help him recover, but there was nothing in the kitchen to work with. She couldn't cook what she didn't have. Xiaozheng stood up. I'll go nap in Xiao Jun's room. He turned to me and paused. If you need anything, call me. Then he walked off to the west room. I stood alone in the yard, feeling the quiet settle around me. The wind came over the wall, cool against my skin. I looked out toward the distance. The border sky was wide and pale, and far off, a line of barren mountains stretched across the horizon. Those mountains looked empty.
But they might not be.
My eyes lingered on them. Something stirred inside me. A pull, an itch. I wanted to go up there and see for myself. I looked down at my hand. Back in the room, I'd tested it quietly. My wood element power had dropped to level 2 after crossing worlds, but it was still there. Still mine. As long as there were plants, I could work with them. That was all I needed. The next morning, I woke early. When I stepped outside, Xiaoyu was already squatting in the yard, weaving a basket from thin branches. Her fingers moved fast. She'd clearly done this 1,000 times.
She smiled when she saw me.
Sister-in-law, you're up. I'm going to the mountain to dig wild vegetables. The family was stuck in that hungry gap between harvests, and the military post had no extra grain to hand out. Everyone in the village had been going up the mountain to search for food. My eyes lit up. I'll come with you. She looked surprised, but I grabbed a worn basket and didn't give her time to argue. The truth was, I'd learned something last night that made everything worse. Because of the drought, the government couldn't send grain payments to the border, but they still demanded the soldiers hand over their yearly tax grain on time. That squeezed everyone even harder. The village had switched to 2 meals a day. Morning meal around 7 to 9, evening meal around 3 to 5. That lunch I ate yesterday? That was also dinner. I'd gone to bed hungry, but after 5 years in the apocalypse, I was used to an empty stomach. Still, I needed to find food, and fast. Wang Guixiang heard us talking from the kitchen. You two can go, but don't wander too far. The mountains mostly dried up these days. She sighed. If you can bring back some wild greens, that'd be good enough. Xiaoyu stayed cheerful. Maybe today we'll get lucky. We left the village and headed into the hills behind it. The mountains stretched out in a long chain, but without rain for so long, most of the plants had turned yellow and dry. Along the path, I could see patches of overturned earth where villagers had already dug through everything. About 15 minutes up, we reached the halfway point. Xiaoyu started searching with her head down, poking through the ground for anything green. I had other plans. When she wandered off to check another slope, I stopped in front of a clump of dead grass. Making sure she wasn't watching, I slowly stretched out my hand. A thin thread of energy flowed from my palm into the roots of the dried-out grass. I closed my eyes. The feeling was familiar, that warm green current moving from me into the earth. A few seconds later, the dead stems shifted. A faint wetness crept back into them. The roots stirred, and a tiny green shoot pushed up through the brown. It worked.
But barely.
Back in the apocalypse, I was a level 5 wood element ability user. I could make an entire field sprout in seconds. Now I dropped to level 2. I could only coax out one small shoot where I used to grow whole crops. My power was simple. I could only make plants grow. Nothing fancy. I couldn't heal wounds or control vines like the top-tier wood users. No combat ability at all. That's why I was stuck doing farm work at the base back in the apocalypse. And that's exactly why I picked Xiao Zheng at the selection. I had 0 fighting power, so I needed a man who had plenty. I opened my eyes and sighed. Weaker, yes. But still there. As long as I had the ability, I had hope. Then something strange happened. As I was about to stand, I felt something I'd never felt before. Not with my eyes, with my mind. Like my consciousness had reached out and touched something living. I closed my eyes again and pushed my energy out, but this time I didn't try to grow anything. I just listened. A wave of pale green awareness rippled outward from me. Suddenly, the plants around me appeared in my mind as tiny points of light. Some dim, some a little brighter. My heart beat faster. It was like a map had unfolded inside my head. Every plant within range was visible to me, not with sight, but with feeling. They were alive in my mind, each one telling me what it was, where it was, what it could do. Then I saw it. A cluster of brights not far away, much stronger than the dead grass around them. Living plants, hidden behind a large boulder on a small slope. I opened my eyes, barely able to contain my excitement. My wood ability had mutated when I crossed into this world. Before, I could only grow things. Now I could sense plants across a wide area, what kind they were, where they grew, even what properties they had. Medicinal herbs, wild vegetables, useful roots, I could feel them all. In the apocalypse, this would have been nothing special. But here, in a place where people survived by foraging from the mountains, this was a treasure-hunting superpower. I took a deep breath and forced myself to stay calm. Xiao Yu, HM, she looked up from where she was digging at a grass root. I pointed toward the boulder. Let's try over there. She frowned. That's the rocky slope, sister-in-law. Nothing grows there. I smiled. Let's check anyway. Maybe something's hiding between the rocks. She shrugged and came along, not wanting to disappoint me. We circled around the big stone. It was taller than a person, and stepped into the small dip behind it. Xiao Yu gasped. Sister-in-law. Wild vegetables. There, tucked in the sheltered hollow, a patch of greens clung to the ground. Bright little leaves standing out against the dead brown all around them.
No footprints, no digging marks.
Nobody had found the spot. We're eating greens today. She was almost bouncing, digging as fast as her hands could move. How did you know? You're amazing. Just a feeling, I said, keeping my voice light. I wasn't about to tell anyone about my ability. But if I wanted to build a better life for this family, I'd need to use it. A lot. So I figured I'd start building a reputation for having good instincts. That way, when I found things too easily in the future, there'd be an explanation ready. You must be the luckiest person alive. Xiao Yu laughed. Maybe I am, I said, smiling, and knelt down to help her dig. My power had changed, grown in a new direction. And with it, my confidence in surviving this world grew too. Soon our baskets were half full of bright green purslane. We'll have extra food tonight. Ma's going to be so happy. Xiao Yu couldn't stop grinning, chattering away about how she hadn't seen vegetables this fresh in ages. This is enough for 2 meals. Maybe more will grow back here soon, I said casually. With my wood ability, I could make that happen whenever I wanted. Really? Then this is our secret spot, sister-in-law. We tell nobody. I smiled and agreed. She figured the roots left behind would sprout again on their own. She wasn't wrong. She just didn't know I'd be giving them a little help. While she was busy picking, I quietly sent out another pulse of my ability. More faint plant signatures appeared in my mind, over near a cluster of shrubs, not far away. Once we'd picked enough purslane, I stood up and looked around. Xiao Yu, I think there might be more over that way. Really? Let's go. She grabbed her basket and off we went. Sure enough, another little cluster of wild greens was hiding by the bushes. No way, she was beaming. We kept going like that. In a short stretch, we found 2 more patches. Both baskets were stuffed full. Just as we were about to head home, I sensed something different, a few plants with a distinct feel to them. I followed the signal to a patch of dry grass and found several stalks growing upright, with feathery leaves, white fuzz on the undersides, and small pale yellow flowers hanging from the stems. My eyes lit up. Medicinal herbs. What's that, sister-in-law? Xiaoyu noticed my excitement right away. Wild astragalus, I told her. It's a medicinal herb. We can sell it to a pharmacy for money. Her eyes went huge. That's medicine? We can actually get money for it. It's good stuff. It boosts energy, fights fatigue, reduces swelling, and helps wounds heal faster. Then Big Brother can use it. She immediately thought of Xiaozheng recovering at home with nothing to help him. Sister-in-law, you're incredible. You even know about herbs. She looked at me like I'd hung the moon. I picked up a few things from the household doctor back at the old manor, I said vaguely, and steered us back to digging. By the time we finished, both baskets were so full they were heavy to carry. Wild greens and medicinal herbs, a real haul. Let's go home. The sun was climbing high and the mountain wind was turning warm. We headed downhill, with our arms aching from the weight. Xiaoyu smiled the whole way. Sister-in-law, our luck today was unbelievable. I usually spend an entire day up there and come home with almost nothing. She kept peeking at the baskets, grinning wider each time. Ma is going to lose her mind. I just smiled. It wasn't luck. It was my ability. As long as my wood power still worked, this mountain would keep us fed. When we reached the bottom, a few military wives spotted us on the road. Isn't that the Xiao girl? What did you find today? Xiaoyu held out her basket proudly, letting them look. Their jaws dropped. That much wild greens? Where did you dig all that? The mountains nearly picked bare. One woman poked through the leaves. These are tender too. Enough for 2 meals easy. Someone glanced at me. Is this your new sister-in-law? Xiaoyu nodded, puffing up with pride.
Yep.
And she's the one who found all of it. Every eye turned to me. New brides got good luck. Just lucky, I said with a light smile and left it at that. Okay, we're heading back. Xiaoyu tugged me along before anyone could ask too many questions. I think she was worried they'd try to swipe some of our vegetables. Back at the yard, Wang Guixiang was under the eaves patching Xiaozheng's torn clothes. Xiaoyu ran up to her.
Ma.
Look how much we got. Wang Guixiang looked up and her eyebrows shot straight to her hairline. Goodness. That much. She dropped her sewing instantly. Let me see. Xiao Jun came out of the house, equally stunned. How did you find all this? Is there really that much left on the hillside? Wang Guixiang's face changed in a flash. She turned on Xiaoyu. Did you take your sister-in-law into the deep mountains? The deep mountains were forbidden territory around here. The border ranges weren't like the gentle green hills of central lands. They stretched endlessly, wild and savage, full of beasts bigger and fiercer than anything normal. Even the soldiers didn't go in lightly. Xiaoyu waved her hands frantically.
No.
Ma, give us some credit. We'd never dare go in there. Then where did all these come from? It was all sister-in-law. She has a gift for finding wild vegetables. Everything we got today, she found. Xiao Jun's mouth fell open. All of this was just from the lower slopes, I swear. We didn't go deep, Xiaoyu insisted. Wang Guixiang looked at me, and I saw something new in her eyes, a quiet approval, a notch deeper than before. Good. Tonight we're making wild vegetable flat cakes. Mixed with coarse flour, the greens would stretch the food further. Maybe enough for the whole family to feel 5 or 6 parts full. Xiaoyu, come wash these. The 2 of them hurried off to the water trough, buzzing with energy. I moved to help, but Wang Guixiang waved me off. You rest. This little bit of work is nothing for us. A new bride just through the door doesn't start with chores, so I stepped back and let them have it. I didn't push. Fitting into a family means knowing when to help and when to let people do things their way. I stood in the yard, watching mother and daughter scrub greens together, and felt a quiet satisfaction settle in my chest. Today was just the beginning. Those mountains had a lot more to give, and I was the only one who could find it. Wang Guixiang was sorting through the basket when she pulled out the herbs and frowned. What's this? Ma, don't mess those up. That's astragalus. Xiaoyu jumped in before I could speak, then rattled off everything I'd told her on the mountain. Wang Guixiang turned to me with a new look in her eyes. You know medicinal herbs? I learned a little from the household doctor back at the manor, I said calmly. Same answer I gave Xiaoyu. Keep it simple, keep it vague. That's a real skill. Her voice had changed. There was weight behind those words now. Out here on the border, grain and medicine were the two things that mattered most, and people who could identify herbs were rare. She went quiet for a moment, then said, From now on, take Xiaoyu with you when you go up the mountain. Bring back as much as you can. That one sentence meant more than it sounded. She was giving me a role in this family. A purpose. I wasn't just another mouth to feed anymore. Xiaoyu was thrilled. Ma, sister-in-law says we can even grow the astragalus. Grow it. Wang Guixiang blinked. You can do that. Yes, I said. If we plant these in the yard and let them grow bigger, they'll sell for a better price. The truth was, I could speed them up with my ability in no time. But I needed to keep things looking natural. A few days of visible growth would be more believable. Wang Guixiang nodded slowly. Try it then. She pointed to a corner of the yard. That patch is empty. Use it. I looked where she pointed. A small square of cracked, dry earth with a few scraggly weeds. It didn't look like much. But to me, it was everything. Opportunity wrapped in dirt. I'll take it, I said. I carefully set the astragalus aside and got to work. Wang Guixiang gave me a small hoe, and I went to that empty patch and started loosening the soil. Half sand, mostly dry. A tough growing spot for anyone else. But I'd grown crops in worse ground than this during the apocalypse. I dug small holes, transplanted the astragalus carefully, covered the roots, and patted the soil down. Then, when nobody was looking, I pushed a thread of wood energy into the earth. Just a little. Enough to strengthen the roots without making anything grow suspiciously fast. I'd feed them more over the next 2 days. Once the root systems were solid, the plants would be worth real money. Standing up, I noticed the rest of the plot was still bare. Seemed like a waste. Andy, do you have any seeds? I'd like to plant more. She disappeared into the house and came back with a small pouch. These are leftovers from the spring planting. Not the best quality, but if you want to try, go ahead. She was humoring me, I could tell. A new daughter-in-law who wanted to play farmer? Fine, let her have her fun. The seeds were practically worthless anyway. Don't worry, I said, smiling as I took them. I'm actually pretty good at growing things. If it's a seed, I can make it sprout. I said it lightly, but I was planting the idea too, building my cover story one comment at a time. Over by the water trough, Wang Guixiang and Xiaoyu had finished washing all the wild greens. Bright bundles of purslane sat piled in a wooden basin, so green and fresh it lifted your mood just looking at them. These are so tender, Wang Guixiang murmured, picking through the leaves. Haven't seen greens this good in a while. Xiaoyu beamed. That's sister-in-law's luck. She snuck a glance at me. I could practically see the thought forming in her head. Stick close to the new sister-in-law, and good things happen. When it was time, mother and daughter started on breakfast. The fire crackled to life, and the bottom of the iron pan glowed red. Wang Guixiang chopped the wild greens, mixed them into a basin with coarse flour, a rough, dark yellow powder ground from wheat bran and sorghum, then added water and kneaded it into dough. Xiaoyu fed sticks into the fire while her mother shaped the dough into flat cakes and slapped them onto the hot pan. The sizzle filled the kitchen. No oil, not a drop, just the cake's own moisture hitting the heat. But as they cooked, a faint wheat smell drifted out, mixed with the clean scent of wild greens, and the whole yard filled with it. I was crouched by the garden patch, giving the soil one last quiet pulse of energy, and from that angle I could see straight into the kitchen. Mother and daughter working side by side, steam rising, fire glowing. It was such an ordinary scene, but it hit me somewhere deep. I hadn't watched a family cook together in years. In the apocalypse, meals were rations torn open and eaten alone, standing up, watching your back. This, the fire, the chatter, the smell of food in a home, it made something inside me go still and warm. From the other side of the yard, Xiao Jun appeared, nose twitching. Ma, is it ready yet? His stomach was growling loud enough for everyone to hear. She glared at him. Hold on, it's not done. But she peeled the first finished cake off the pan and handed it over anyway.
Here.
Stop your whining. He grinned huge and bit into it without waiting for it to cool. Go tell your brother it's time to eat. Xiaozheng had been up since dawn, chopping bamboo behind the house. Now that there was a new person in the family, he figured they'd need more things, baskets, tools, whatever he could make. He tied up his bamboo pile, dragged it to the front yard, and the moment he stepped in, his nose caught the smell. Better food today? His stomach answered before his brain did. Wang Guixiang stacked the finished cakes onto a wooden plate, a tall pile, noticeably bigger than yesterday's lunch. Then she called everyone in. The table was set. A basket of wild vegetable flat cakes, a pot of vegetable soup, a plate of dressed purslane, and a small bowl of salted dried greens. Almost the same as yesterday's meal, but the portions were clearly larger, and each cake was a size bigger. Eat up. Xiao Jun grabbed the first cake and stuffed a big piece in his mouth. So good. He was chewing with his whole face. Pure satisfaction. Of course it's good, Xiao Yu said, lifting her chin proudly. Me and sister-in-law picked those greens. I noticed Xiaozheng raise an eyebrow slightly at how quickly his little sister had warmed up to me. Then he glanced my way. I was already reaching for a cake. The coarse grain scratched my fingers a bit, but the wild greens mixed and made it softer than yesterday's plain black flour bread. I was about to take my first bite when I realized he was staring at me. What? Did he want my cake? No way. This one was mine. I bit into it immediately. The cake was still rough, but it had a light, clean taste from the greens. Way better than yesterday. At least it didn't scrape my throat raw. Xiao Zheng's mouth twitched. I'm not sure what expression I was making, but he shook his head and started eating.
2 bites.
1 cake gone.
2 more bites.
Another one gone. I watched, stunned. Did this man even chew? Before long, more than half the basket was empty. Xiaozheng slowed down after his 8th cake and started sipping soup with some pickled vegetables on the side. Wang Guixiang had made about 35 or 36 cakes this morning, roughly 7 per person. She and Xiao Yu only ate 5 each. Xiao Jun ate 7, which made sense for a growing teenage boy. But I also ate 7. Everyone stared at me. Sister-in-law, are you okay? You're not going to burst? Xiao Yu asked, genuinely worried. This was the fullest she'd been in a month, and she couldn't even finish 5. Yet here I was, thin as a stick, matching her brother bite for bite.
I'm
fine, I said with an awkward smile. Xiaozhen looked at me and pushed the basket closer. Eat. No, I'm full, I said quickly, waving my hands. I'd already eaten my share. 7 or 8 parts full was enough.
You eat.
You need it more. I pushed the basket back toward him. If I was only 7 parts full, he was probably at 5 or 6. This man needed more food than anyone in this house. The urge to grow grain hit me harder than ever. I had supernatural powers. How could I let my own husband go hungry? You sure? He eyed me like he didn't quite believe me. I'm sure. Go ahead. It was only my first day here. I couldn't exactly eat the whole family out of house and home.
Not yet.
He accepted that and went back in, sweeping up every last cake and every drop of soup. When he was done, the plates were so clean you could see her face in them. After the meal, Wang Guixiang didn't stand up right away. She sat with a serious look on her face. There's something I need to discuss with all of you. Everyone looked up. She turned to me first. You're part of the Xiao family now. We should do things properly. I'm planning to set up a small banquet the day after tomorrow. We'll invite the village chief and your husband's commanding officer to come witness. That will count as your wedding. She sighed, looking a little defeated by her own words. Times are bad, and we can't afford anything big. But getting married is a major event. We can't just pretend it didn't happen. Then she started counting on her fingers, tallying up everything the family had left. A palm-sized piece of smoked meat she'd been saving. About 2 bowls of sorghum flour. A handful of dried mushrooms from earlier in the year. Some pickled vegetables in a jar. Maybe she could buy a few eggs from the village and trade for some other ingredients. Put it all together, and we should be able to scrape together 4 or 5 decent dishes. She looked at us. What do you think? Whatever you decide, Ma. Xiaojing said. He pulled a small cloth pouch from his jacket and set 2 silver taels on the table. This is 2 months' pay. Use it however you need. Wang Guixiang picked up the silver, weighed it in her palm, and her brow furrowed. 2 months, and this is all? It keeps getting less, and… Ma. Careful, Xiaojing cut her off, lowering his voice. The houses in this village sat close together. That kind of talk about the military skimming pay could cause real trouble if overheard. She caught herself, glanced at the closed gate, and sighed quietly. What a life! When he was just a low-ranking flag bearer, he used to bring home 500 or 600 copper coins a month plus some grain. Now he'd been promoted to 100-man officer, fought and bled for it, and 2 months of work earned even less. The military post was pocketing more and more of their wages. She looked at the silver in her hand, then at me, and her frustration softened just slightly. At least her eldest son finally had a wife. One less thing keeping her up at night. The room went quiet. Xiao Jun and Xiao Yu kept their heads down. This wasn't a conversation for them. I sat still listening to everything, thinking. The day after tomorrow was my wedding. The only one I'd ever have. I couldn't let the Xiao family shoulder all of it while I contributed nothing. I didn't need anything fancy, but I didn't want it to be embarrassingly bare either. I made up my mind. I needed to go back up the mountain today. No more waiting. I'd already sensed several spots where valuable herbs might be growing. If I could dig up something worth selling, I could add a couple of real dishes to that wedding table. After breakfast, Wang Guixiang started organizing everything. She sent Xiao Zheng and Xiao Jun to town with the silver to buy supplies, oil, salt, vinegar, whatever they could find for the wedding banquet. Then she grabbed a basket and headed out to the village to trade with neighbors for eggs and vegetables. Suddenly the yard was quiet. Just me and Xiao Yu. She was washing dishes by the water tank, humming a little tune. I stood there looking at the mountains in the distance, already planning my next move. I could feel it, more plant signals up there, several of them much stronger than the astragalus from this morning. Those were almost certainly valuable herbs. If I could dig them up, I could sell them and put real food on the wedding table. But I needed to go alone. With Xiao Yu tagging along, I couldn't use my ability freely. I was trying to figure out how to slip away when the gate creaked open. A round-faced girl about Xiao Yu's age poked her head in. Xiao Yu, wanna come wash clothes by the river? She glanced at me shyly. I heard your family got a new sister-in-law. I won't come in. Xiao Yu hesitated. She looked at me, clearly feeling she should stay and keep me company. That was sweet. But this was my chance. Go ahead, I told her. I'll just rest at home. But you'll be alone. I'm not a child. Go. She thought it over. This was a military village, safe enough, everyone knew everyone and gave in. The 2 girls laughed their way out the gate, and the yard went silent. Ibaita moment. Made sure nobody was around. Then I grabbed a bamboo basket and slipped out the door. The village was mostly empty. Everyone was off on errands. I followed the trail up the hillside, and within minutes I was at the halfway point again. This time I didn't hold back. I raised my palm and let my wood energy flow out completely. A ring of pale green awareness rippled outward from me like water, spreading silently in every direction. Plants lit up in my mind one by one. Then, on a slope not far away, a bright, much stronger than the purslane from earlier. That was definitely a medicinal herb. I followed the signal. The deeper I went, the clearer the plant signatures became. I stopped at a crack between some rocks, pushed aside dead grass, and found several plants with curling leaves and thick roots. My breath caught. Cotinopsis. Wild Cotinopsis root. Out here on the border, this stuff was worth a lot more than astragalus. I dug it out carefully and placed it in my basket. Then I pushed my ability out again. This time, even further away, I sensed a whole cluster of plant signatures, dense, like a patch of green stars. I smiled. This mountain was hiding plenty of good things. I kept moving, following the bright spots through the hills. My little hoe worked fast, turning up soil, pulling out roots. Buplurum. More Cotinopsis. A few small stalks of skullcap. Before long, my basket was half full of herbs. If I took these to the pharmacy in town, they'd bring in decent money. Enough to make sure the wedding dinner wasn't embarrassing. Then I looked up and froze. The trees around me were taller now. The dead grass was thicker. The light was dimmer. Without realizing it, I'd wandered into the deep mountain. My stomach tightened. Deep mountain meant wild animals. And I had zero combat ability. Just a small gardening hoe. I turned to leave. That's when I heard it. A rustling in the bushes. Soft but clear. My whole body went rigid. My heart slammed into my ribs. I gripped the hoe with both hands and stared at the shaking grass, already mapping escape routes in my head. Then the bushes burst open, and a gray shape shot out. I nearly jumped backward, but then I stopped. It was a rabbit. A fat, gray, fluffy rabbit with its ears sticking straight up, nibbling on grass like it didn't have a care in the world. My fear vanished instantly. All I could see was meat. Braised rabbit. Cold rabbit salad. Roasted rabbit leg. Beautiful, delicious, protein-rich meat. If I could put a rabbit dish on the wedding table, that would be a real showstopper. I set my basket down, gripped the hoe tight, and crouched low. Slowly, carefully, I crept toward it. 1 step. 2 steps. Its ear twitched. My heart stopped. It bolted. 1 kick of its hind legs and it was gone, zigzagging through the grass, heading straight for a crack in the rocks. Get back here. I chased it 2 steps, but it was way too fast. It was about to disappear into the crevice. In desperation, I threw my energy outward. Green awareness flooded the ground around me. And then a wild thought hit me. If I could sense plants now, could I also control them? There was no time to think it through. I just focused everything on the vine near the rabbit's path. The vine moved. The vine that had been flat on the ground suddenly whipped upward, like something invisible was pulling it. Several thin tendrils lashed out and wrapped around the rabbit's hind legs just as it leaped. It crashed face first into the grass, legs tangled tight. The more it kicked, the tighter the vines held. Got you. I didn't even care about the breakthrough. All I could think about was meat. I lunged forward and pinned the rabbit down. It was still thrashing, so I yanked the cloth cord from my waist and tied its back legs together. When it finally stopped moving, I let out a long breath. I looked at the fat gray rabbit in my hands and couldn't help grinning. What a lucky day. I hung it on my basket and stared into the dense forest for a moment, feeling a rush of excitement. My wood ability wasn't just growing and sensing anymore. I could actually control plants, move them, use them. That changed everything. But the sun was already leaning west. Time to go. If I wasn't home when the others got back, they'd worry. Today's haul was incredible. 5 or 6 types of medicinal herbs, not large amounts of each, but quality I could guarantee. On the way down the mountain, I fed my energy into every herb in the basket. The roots thickened, the stalks grew taller, and the medicinal properties inside each plant strengthened. By the time I reached the bottom, every single piece was top grade. I also learned from my earlier mistake. Instead of planting the herbs at home and slowly growing them where people might notice, I enhanced them now on the move so they'd be ready to sell right away. While I was up in the mountains, things had been happening in the village. Under the big locust tree in the center of the village, a crowd of women and children had gathered. In the middle stood Xinfeng's mother, Lu Tsuehua, showing off her new daughter-in-law, Su Lan. Lu Tsuehua had dressed up in her best blue jacket, hair combed perfectly, beaming like the sun itself. She wanted every person in this village to know that her son had brought home the finest wife anyone had ever seen. Our Lan was raised in a noble household. She's full of talent, she announced proudly. The government really blessed us military families this time. Which wife in this village can compare? The other women shifted uncomfortably at that. The comment basically said their own wives were inferior. But Xinfeng was a 100-man officer now, so nobody wanted to argue. They just smiled and played along. What a blessing for you, Annie Shin. Officer Shin has good taste. She looks like she can really manage a household. Lu Tsuehua puffed up even more. Of course. You don't even know. My daughter-in-law can sew, use an abacus, and she can even read and write. That got genuine gasps. Literacy was rare out here. Even some of the men only knew a handful of characters. Su Lan stood beside her mother-in-law looking perfectly humble, head slightly bowed, the picture of modesty. But I knew that look. It was calculated. Everyone is too kind, Su Lan said softly. I just attended to my young mistress, accompanied her to banquets, greeted guests, managed her affairs. I picked up a few small skills along the way. The crowd ate it up. Su Lan's sense of superiority was practically glowing through her skin, though she hid it well. She'd already consummated her marriage with Xin Feng the night before, and her ability to read and do accounts had clearly impressed him. Her mother-in-law hadn't given her any trouble either. She was already secure in the Shun household. Then someone in the crowd spotted Wang Guixiang passing by, with her trading basket. Guixiang, I heard your family got a new wife too. She's from the same place as the Shin bride, right? Also a top-ranked maid. She must be pretty capable too. Wang Guixiang rolled her eyes privately. She had no idea what I used to do at the manor. She'd been too busy worrying about the wedding banquet to ask about my past. She was a top maid, so she can't be bad, she said matter-of-factly. Then she lifted her basket and added, besides, what does the past matter? What counts is whether you can handle the life in front of you. That's real skill. She paused, then finished with a line that made half the women nod. A woman's fate isn't decided by her first half of life. It's decided by what comes after marriage. All the fancy credentials in the world don't mean a thing if you can't put food on the table. Several women murmured in agreement. It was the plain truth. Out here on the border, being able to read didn't fill empty stomachs. Knowing how to farm did. Su Lan spoke up with that sweet, gentle voice of hers. Auntie probably doesn't know much about Su He yet. We grew up together, serving the same young mistress. Then she laid it out for everyone. She explained that I handled indoor duties, organizing the mistress's clothes and arranging her meals, while she, of course, handled the important things, accompanying the mistress to banquets, greeting guests, managing outside affairs. The message was clear. Everyone understood instantly. The Xiao family's bride wasn't as valued by their old masters as the Shin family's bride. Wang Guixiang wasn't having it. So what if she organized clothes? So what if she managed meals? That means she knows how to run a household. My daughter-in-law can even identify medicinal herbs. Do you see me bragging? That caught everyone off guard. Herbs? Really? That's actual skill. The crowd swarmed around Wang Guixiang, firing questions.
Su Lan's smile stiffened.
She squeezed her handkerchief tight. Auntie must be mistaken. Su He spent all her time inside the manor. How would she know anything about herbs? Lu Tsuehua piled on. Guixiang, we're all neighbors here. No need to make things up just to save face. Wang Guixiang exploded. Who's making things up? My daughter-in-law knows herbs, and that's that. That's when I came walking down the hill with my basket on my back. I'd heard familiar voices from the path. Sounded like my mother-in-law arguing with someone. So instead of sneaking home, I headed toward the big locust tree. Hey, isn't it the Xiao bride? Someone spotted me first, and suddenly every pair of eyes turned my way. I had no idea what was going on. I just called out, Annie. Then they noticed the basket. What's in there? People crowded close. It was full of mountain plants, things they couldn't name, but could tell weren't ordinary weeds.
Some herbs I dug up, I said.
Surprise rippled through the crowd. Then someone shrieked. There's a rabbit too. Hanging from the side of my basket was the fat gray rabbit, legs tied up tight. That caused an uproar. Where'd you get that? That thing's got to be 5 or 6 pounds. That's several meals right there. Wang Guixiang pushed through immediately, shielding my basket with both hands. Look all you want, but hands off. Don't you let that rabbit loose. Got lucky in the mountains, I said with a smile. The praise came pouring in, and this time it was real. Not the forced, polite kind they'd given Su Lan. This was genuine envy. That luck is something else. Nobody in this village has caught game in ages. Guixiang, your daughter-in-law is impressive. That's a real meat dish for the wedding. My family hasn't tasted meat in a month. Herbs that could be sold for silver.
Meat you could actually eat.
Things you could see and touch, and put in your belly. That meant more out here than reading or doing sums ever would. Su Lan's face darkened. She cut through the chatter. Su He, since when do you know herbs? We lived under the same roof. How come I never knew? I smiled calmly. We shared a roof, not every waking moment. Besides, do I need to report everything I know to you? We'd been the same rank back at the manor, equal in every way. But Sulan had always tried to act like she was above me. Her expression soured. She forced a smile. I suppose you were hiding your talents all along, Lu Tsuehua muttered, probably picked it up by spying on someone. Wang Guixiang fired back instantly. So what if she did? A capable person can learn anywhere. Then Su Lan tried another angle. Her voice turned scolding, like a concerned older sister. Su He, now that you're married, you should follow proper etiquette. You really shouldn't still be calling her auntie, you know. Wang Guixiang laughed coldly. That's because our family has manners. Unlike some people who skip every ceremony and go straight to the bedroom. She raised her voice, so everyone could hear. The Shao family may be poor, but we won't disrespect our new bride. The day after tomorrow, these two will have a proper ceremony with bowing and witnesses. Then she'll change what she calls me. That's how it's done. Murmurs swept through the crowd. The Shao family is holding a wedding banquet. In times like these? That shows real respect for the bride. Guixiang, your family's got class. Wang Guixiang lifted her chin with pride, grabbed my hand, and marched me home through a sea of envious stares. Behind us, the crowd broke apart. Lu Tsuehua's face had turned ugly. Minutes ago, she'd been glowing with triumph. Now she looked like someone had slapped her. What's so special about that? She spat after we were gone. Just a rabbit and some weeds. And a wedding banquet in this drought? Let's see how many dishes she actually puts on the table. Don't come crying when it's embarrassing. The women nearby heard her, but said nothing. Everyone knew she was just bitter. She'd been the center of attention until we showed up and stole the show. And Sulan. She stood there alone, clutching her handkerchief so hard her knuckles went white. She'd seen how the women looked at me, like I was the one who mattered, like I was the better bride. What stung her most was the wedding banquet. The Shao family was throwing one for me. The Shin family hadn't even mentioned one for her. If nobody had brought it up, she could have let it go. But now, both of us married to officers of the same rank, and only one family thought their bride was worth celebrating? She couldn't stand it. I could practically feel her stewing from across the village. She was telling herself the same thing she always did, that she would never, ever let me come out ahead. She could think whatever she liked. I had herbs to sell, and a rabbit to cook. Meanwhile, Sulan was already working on Lu Tsuehua. She put on her soft, hesitant voice.
Ma.
I didn't expect the Shao family to throw a banquet for Su He. Lu Tsuehua snorted. Let them waste their grain. Who cares? Su Lan let a careful pause hang in the air. It's just. If the Shin family doesn't do anything, people in the village might talk. That got Lu Tsuehua's attention. Talk. Su Lan nodded, playing the concerned daughter-in-law perfectly. Su He and I came from the same manor. People are already comparing us. And our husbands hold the same rank. If the Shao family throws a banquet and ours doesn't even react, what will people say? She stopped there and let the thought sink in. Lu Tsuehua's face went dark. How had she not thought of this? If the Shao family celebrated and the Shin family did nothing, the whole village would whisper that the Shuns were cheap, or worse, not as good as the Shaos. She slapped her thigh.
No.
We can't let them look down on us. Sulan hid her smile behind a modest expression. We don't need anything big, Ma. Just a couple of tables, invite some neighbors. Nothing fancy, yes. That's exactly right. Lu Tsuehua was fired up now. My son is a 100-man officer too. We're not losing to the Shao family. Let's go talk to Ah Feng. We're having a banquet too. Sulan had gotten exactly what she wanted. Back at our end, Wang Guixiang was pulling me through the village at full speed. When we reached the yard, Xiaoyu was pacing by the gate, looking panicked. Sister-in-law. She ran over, relief flooding her face. Where did you go? I was so worried. She told me she'd come home, done the laundry, tidied the yard, then knocked on my door, no answer. She was about to go searching for me when we showed up. I felt a pang of warmth. This girl really did think of me as family already. Sorry for worrying you, I said gently. I had nothing to do, so I went up the mountain to see if I could find more wild greens. Her eyes went wide. You went alone. Wang Guixiang cut the fussing short. Inside, both of you. Let's get that basket unloaded. She moved fast, untied the rabbit from my basket first, stuffed it into an empty bamboo cage in the corner, and slapped a flat basket over the top as a lid. No way that rabbit was escaping. Xiaoyu had already spotted it. A rabbit? Sister-in-law, you caught a rabbit? She looked like she wanted to kick herself for going to the river with her friend instead of following me to the mountain. Got lucky, I said, smiling. Didn't expect to run into one. You're amazing. Her eyes were practically sparkling. That's real meat. We can add a proper dish to the wedding table. Wang Guixiang's whole face relaxed. Obviously. Nothing says respectable banquet like meat. We'll keep it alive for 2 days until the feast. Then she had me unload the herbs. Xiaoyu ran inside and brought out a flat winnowing tray and a stool. The 3 of us crouched in the yard, sorting everything. I laid each plant out one by one. This is Buplurum. This is Cotinopsis. These are Astragalus. And here, skullcap and wild yam. Wang Guixiang's eyes grew wider with each one. She defended me in front of the village women, but now, seeing it all spread out in front of her, she was genuinely stunned. This wasn't a handful of weeds. This was money. Real money. We finished sorting. The final count: 3 stalks of Buplurum for Cotinopsis roots, 6 astragalus plants, 2 skullcap, 3 wild yam, plus a few other smaller herbs. Not a huge amount, but every piece was in excellent condition. Wang Guixiang stared at the tray like she couldn't believe her eyes. All of this. Xiaoyu was bouncing on her heels. Sister-in-law, can this really all be sold? I nodded. The quantity isn't huge, but the quality is top grade. If the pharmacy in town knows what they're looking at, this should fetch a few silver taels. Wang Guixiang nearly fell off her stool. A few taels of silver? That was enough to feed the family for months. She looked at me with completely different eyes. Her eldest son had really struck gold. One day through the door, and I'd already brought home herbs and a rabbit. She was probably wondering what kind of new bride could do all that. Right then, the gate creaked open. "Ma, we're back," Xiao Jun's voice rang out. Xiao Zheng and Xiao Jun walked in carrying supplies from town. Xiao Jun was clutching a jug of wine in his arms. He set everything down, then spotted the herbs laid out across the yard. "What's all this?" "Herbs," Xiaoyu announced proudly. He rushed over, eyes wide. "This much." Xiao Zheng looked too. His gaze settled on the neatly arranged roots and leaves. I could tell from his expression. He knew this wasn't just random grass yanked from the hillside. This was sorted, organized, deliberate work. Before Xiao Zheng could say a word, Xiaoyu was already shouting, "Big brother, sister-in-law dug all of these. And there's a rabbit too." She ran to the corner and whipped the cover off the cage.
Xiaoyun gasped.
"You caught that, sister-in-law?" "Got lucky," I said again. But that excuse wasn't working so well anymore. Xiao Zheng's eyes moved from the rabbit, to the herbs, to my face. I could see the questions turning behind his expression. A pampered maid from a rich household in the capital, digging medicinal herbs and catching wild rabbits? None of it added up for him. He didn't say anything, but his gaze was deeper than before. Wang Guixiang took charge. "Enough chatter. Let these herbs dry overnight, and we'll take them to town tomorrow to check the price." She turned to Xiao Zheng. "Did you get everything?" He nodded and set his purchases on the table: salt, vinegar, sauces, red paper for decorations, and 2 pounds of pork fat. All for the wedding banquet.
Good.
"Between what you bought and what I traded for in the village, we should have enough for a decent spread," Wang Guixiang said, finally looking relieved. Then she glanced at me with a warmth I hadn't seen before. "This is all thanks to Suhi." Xiao Zheng said nothing, but I caught him touching something hidden inside his jacket. At the time, I didn't know what it was. Once the herbs were put away and everyone scattered to their tasks, the yard went quiet. I was washing my hands at the well when I looked up and found Xiao Zheng standing right there. "Need something?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a small box from inside his jacket and held it out. "For you." My eyes went wide. I wasn't expecting him to buy me anything. I took the box and opened it. Inside was a little cake of rouge. Peach pink, soft and pretty, glowing in the late afternoon light. "You bought this?" He coughed and looked somewhere off to the side. "Passed by the shop. Just grabbed it." He said it like it was nothing. Like he'd accidentally picked it up along with the vinegar and salt. I couldn't help smiling. Thank you. His ears turned red. You'll need it the day after tomorrow, he mumbled. Then he turned and walked away, like staying 1 second longer would kill him. I watched him go, then looked down at the little box of rouge in my hand, and my lips curled up again. This man. Tough as iron on the outside. But he had a sweet side hiding in there somewhere. The next morning I was up early. I checked the herbs one more time. After a night of quiet energy for my ability, the roots were thicker, the stems stronger, and the medicinal smell was rich and deep. These were far better than anything you'd normally dig out of a mountain. If the pharmacist knew his stuff, he'd pay well. When I came outside with the basket, Xiaozheng was already waiting in the yard. He took the basket from my shoulder without a word and slung it over his own. Let's go. The walk to town took about half an hour. The border wind was strong, and the roadside was lined with scrubby bushes and dead grass. A few military families passed us with donkey carts loaded with firewood. This was my first real look at the land beyond the village. Mountains rolling endlessly in the distance, yellow earth stretching wide. Barren, but in a way that felt open and free. The town was small, one main road running north to south, lined with low shops. Fabric, ironwork, grain, wine. Soldiers in armor walked past, mixed in with merchants and military families. I memorized the layout quietly. If I was going to sell herbs regularly, I needed to know this place. Xiaozheng led me straight to a pharmacy called Jian Hall. It was one of only 2 in the area and had a decent reputation for fair prices. Behind the counter, an old man with a thin beard was clicking away on an abacus. He glanced up without much interest. Picking up medicine? Actually, we're selling, I said, setting the basket on the counter. We buy. He barely looked up. But when I started laying the herbs out one by one, his eyebrows shot up. He picked up a Codenopsis root, examined it closely, sniffed it. His casual expression disappeared. You dug these yourselves. Yesterday, I said. He went through the rest, Buplurum, astragalus, skullcap. Every piece had intact roots, good size, and strong fragrance. I could see the recognition in his eyes. In all his years on the border, he'd rarely seen herbs this good. He stroked his beard and smiled. Excellent quality. I won't play games with you. I'll give you a fair price. His abacus clicked rapidly. Then he looked up. 3 taels and 600 cash. My heart jumped. That was even higher than I'd hoped. The boost from my ability had clearly made a difference.
Deal.
Thank you. The assistant brought out the silver. 1 small ingot worth 3 taels, plus loose coins for the rest. Heavy in my palm. 3 taels 6. For our family right now, that was serious money. Beside me, Xiaozheng had gone completely still. I think he'd expected a few hundred coins at most, maybe 1 tael, if we were lucky. Nobody around here made real money from wild herbs. But I'd just earned more from 1 afternoon on the mountain than he made in 2 months of fighting and bleeding. He walked out of the pharmacy, looking slightly dazed. Then he turned and looked at me. I could see something complicated moving behind his eyes. Back on the selection field, I told him I could take care of myself. At the time, he probably thought that was just brave talk. Now he was realizing I'd meant every word. And it wasn't sitting easy with him. Not because he resented it, but because in his mind, providing for his wife was his job. If his wife was out-earning him, what did that make him? He was quiet for a long stretch of the walk home. Then I noticed his jaw set, the way it does when he's made up his mind about something. I had a pretty good guess what he was thinking. He needed to earn more military merit. He wasn't going to let his wife be the family breadwinner. I smiled to myself. He could think whatever he wanted. I'd keep doing what I did best, and he could keep doing what he did best. Between the 2 of us, this family was going to be just fine. Is there anything you want to buy? Xiaozheng asked. The family had already gotten the basics for the wedding, and there was still 2 or 3 taels of savings at home. But they couldn't spend everything on one banquet. Life went on after the feast, and with border conditions getting worse by the day, they needed emergency money set aside. I know the town. I'll take you wherever you need to go, he said. I thought it over. I actually had a long list. More vegetable seeds. If I wanted a steady income, I needed to keep planting. Tools for processing herbs. And a few other things. I want to buy quite a lot. It's kind of all over the place. That's fine. Take your time. So we walked into the market together. The street was noisy and alive. Bun sellers, fabric shops, someone hawking candied fruit on sticks. I took it all in, feeling good.
First stop was the blacksmith.
I picked up a small herb-digging shovel and a handy little knife for trimming roots. Then the general store, some clay jars, rope, cloth bags, dried fruits and sweets. When we got to the seed shop, I frowned. The selection was thin. Cabbage, radish, green onions, garlic, and a few drought-resistant wild vegetable seeds. That was it. Nothing else, I asked. The shopkeeper shrugged. That's what grows out here. Anything fancier won't survive. I went quiet. Based on the memories in my head, this world did have corn, but it wasn't widely grown on the border, and the yields were low. I suspected the problem wasn't the seeds themselves, but the soil. As for sweet potatoes and potatoes, the real high-yield crops I was hoping for, not a trace anywhere. Did they not exist here? Or did nobody know about them yet? A spark of excitement lit inside me. If I could find crops like those, that would be the real path to changing this family's future. Xiao Zheng explained, today isn't market day. If you want unusual seeds, you'll have to wait for the big market. It happens once every 10 days. What's different about market day? We're at the meeting point of 3 countries. Every 10 days, traveling merchants come through with goods from other lands, seeds, spices, even rare items. My eyes lit up. When's the next one? 5 days. I'll be there, I said, already making plans. After all that shopping, both our baskets were nearly full, and most of my silver was gone. Our last stop was a clothing shop. It was small but had several bright outfits hanging on display, red, pink, blue. Splashes of color that stood out against the dusty gray of the border town.
Let's look inside, I said.
Xiao Zheng nodded and followed me in. The moment we stepped through the door, I heard a familiar voice. Can you make that veil any cheaper? I looked up. Su Lan and Shinfeng. Of course. They were at the counter, looking at a plain red wedding veil. The fabric was nothing special, no pattern, no embroidery. Su Lan was wearing a dress that belonged to Shinfeng's younger sister. It had been made 2 years ago and was meant for a smaller girl, so it pulled tight across Su Lan's chest. She could barely lift her arms naturally. Getting Shinfeng to agree to buy even this one cheap veil had taken plenty of sweet-talking on her part. She didn't dare ask for more. She was new in the family and had no real standing yet. I could see the frustration simmering behind her smile. Then she spotted me, and her expression shifted.
Sue?
You're here too? Shinfeng glanced over. Xiao Zheng stood beside me, his gaze passing over them without a word. Just looking at clothes, I said simply. Su Lan recovered quickly and smiled. Of course, a wedding needs something festive. She straightened her back, as if that one plain veil was the height of elegance. Go ahead, take a look. She wanted to see what the Xiao family could afford. Fine by me. I browsed the shop, checking prices and doing the math in my head. After all the tools and supplies I'd bought today, I'd spent 1 tael and 900 cash. That left me 1 tael and 700 cash, 1,700 coins. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. The wedding wasn't just about me and Xiao Zheng. The whole family should look fresh and new. Wang Guixiang had given me her own wedding clothes. Xiao Jun and Xiao Yu wore patches on patches. If I was joining this family, everyone was getting something. I pointed at the fabric display. How much for the dark blue and the light gray summer cloth? 200 coins per bolt. I'll take both. The fabric was a light, breathable cotton, not fancy, but perfect for warm weather. 2 bolts gave me enough to make a new outfit each for Wang Guixiang, Xiao Jun, and Xiao Yu. The shopkeeper was happy to wrap them up. Then I turned to the finished clothes and picked out a set in deep red, a proper wedding dress. I'll take this one too. The shopkeeper's grin got wider. He'd clearly underestimated me based on my plain appearance. But I was buying fast and spending freely, not haggling over every coin. I noticed his eyes flick to Su Lan and Shinfeng, still standing by the counter with their one cheap veil after minutes of bargaining. The comparison spoke for itself. I looked the wedding outfit over carefully. It was plain red cotton, no silk, no embroidery, just evenly dyed cloth. A short jacket with narrow sleeves, a simple wrap skirt with a waist tie. Nothing fancy, but the color was festive and the fabric would last. I'd be climbing mountains and working fields after the wedding, so practical mattered more than pretty. I added a small outer vest for the ceremony day, something to block the wind and add a touch of celebration. Then a pair of sturdy cloth shoes with thick soles. "How much for all of this?" I asked. The shopkeeper beamed. 350 coins. I nodded. Not cheap. That was almost as much as the 2 bolts of fabric I'd bought for the other 3 family members combined. But a woman only gets married once. I still needed underclothes, though. I'd been wearing prisoner rags and had nothing to change into underneath. So I bought 100 coins worth of fine cotton for that. Some things you don't skimp on. Then I turned to the men's section. For Xiaozheng, I picked a deep blue long robe, narrow sleeves, belted waist, clean and dignified. It came with a blue headcloth. The outfit was handsome but too plain for a wedding, so I grabbed a thin red ribbon to stitch along the collar or belt for a splash of color. His military boots were old but solid, so I skipped shoes for him. "How much for this set, based on his height?" I pointed at Xiaozheng, who was standing behind me like a wooden post. The shopkeeper sized him up and grinned. 450 coins. Wrap everything. Give me the total. His abacus clicked. 1 tael, 250 coins altogether. The whole shop went quiet. People turned to stare. Who was spending that kind of money? Shen Feng looked stunned. He probably thought Xiaozheng had handed over every coin of his military pay for me to blow on clothes. He was already smirking inside, thinking we'd have nothing left for the actual banquet. All show, no substance. That's what he was telling himself. Su Lan's smile had completely crumbled. She'd been agonizing over one cheap veil. And here I was, outfitting an entire family. I could practically feel her handkerchief being strangled in her fist. Even Xiaozheng was staring at me, dumbfounded. He'd expected me to pick one outfit for myself. Instead, I'd just bought clothes for every person in the house. I didn't haggle on price, but I did point at a bag of fabric scraps in the corner and asked the shopkeeper to throw those in as a bonus. He agreed happily. I just made his best sale of the week. I paid up. Out of the 3 taels 600 cash I'd earned from the herbs, I now had 450 coins left. Not even half a tael. But I didn't regret a single purchase. Every item was going to someone in my family. If I'd had more money, I would have bought more. Xiaozheng was still standing there looking dazed, so I asked directly. "Think I'm wasteful?" He shook his head, his voice serious.
No.
"Everything you bought is useful. It's all for the family. Nothing was wasted." He paused, then added, "Besides, you earned that money yourself. You can spend it however you want." I liked that answer. He wasn't the type to get controlling about money he didn't even earn, or sulk because his wife spent freely. He knew I hadn't asked him for a single coin. He and his family were the ones benefiting.
Good man.
Not the kind who needs to make everything about his pride. By the time we left the shops, we were carrying so much we couldn't hold it all. Xiaozheng flagged down an ox cart at the street corner.
"Get on," he said.
I loaded everything up without fuss. We sat on the cart as it rolled slowly back toward the village, swaying with every bump. The wind was strong, so I pulled out some pastries I'd bought in town and handed him one. "Something for your stomach." We ate quietly, letting that count as lunch. The cart reached the village in the late afternoon. Smoke was already rising from chimneys as families started cooking their evening meals. The moment we rolled through the gate, eyes followed us. The Xiao family bought a lot. Must be for tomorrow's banquet. Didn't expect them to go this big. Xiaozheng ignored the chatter, unloaded everything, paid the driver, and we carried it all inside. Xiaoyu met us at the gate, eyes going round. "You bought all that?" Wang Guixiang came out of the kitchen wiping her hands, frowning. "Did you empty the whole town?" "How much silver's left?" Xiao Jun was curious too. "Did the herbs sell?" "How much?" I set things down and dusted off my hands. 3 taels 600 cash. The room went dead silent. "How much?" Wang Guixiang's voice shot up an octave. 3 taels 6? For 1 basket of weeds. "Are you sure, sister-in-law?" Xiaoyu was stunned. 3 taels and 600 cash. Their family couldn't save that much in months. I nodded. The shopkeeper knew good herbs when he saw them. He paid a fair price. Wang Guixiang looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. This daughter-in-law could actually make money. Then she asked the question I knew was coming.
So,
How much is left? For 150 coins. Dead silence.
what?
That's all. Her face changed fast. She looked at the mountain of purchases, and I could see the pain hit her. Child, how did you spend it so quickly? Her voice went sharp. 3 taels of silver. Gone before she'd even held it. She didn't know whether to be impressed or furious. Auntie, don't worry, I said gently. Money spent can be earned again. 1 trip up the mountain, and I'll have more herbs to sell. Our family won't run short. I understood her completely. She'd spent her whole life scraping and saving. Watching that much silver vanish in one afternoon was physically painful for her. But I'd survived 5 years in the apocalypse. Now that I finally had a chance at a normal life, I wasn't going to live miserably when I had the power to change things. Then Xiaojing stepped in to help, or tried to. Ma, Su, he didn't waste anything. She bought things the family needs. The money was hers to spend. His heart was in the right place, but his mouth had no filter. Wang Guixiang's eyes flashed with fresh anger. What kind of talk is that? She's been assigned to you by the court. She's a Xiao family wife. We haven't split the household, so how can she keep money to herself? Do you think food and fire would pay for themselves? She was fuming now. Her son, siding with his wife before the wedding had even happened? Forgetting his own mother? I shot Xiaojing a look. Could this man be any more clueless? He wasn't wrong, but saying it that bluntly was like throwing oil on a fire. I jumped in quickly. Auntie, please don't be upset. He doesn't think before he talks. What he means is, as a new bride, if I look presentable, that reflects well on the whole Xiao family. Even so, spending this much, she didn't finish because Xiaojing suddenly shoved a bundle of fabric into her arms.
Here.
Your daughter-in-law bought this for you. Enough to make yourself a new summer outfit. There's fabric for Xiao Jun and Xiao Yu too. He said it fast, like he knew this was the only thing that would stop her scolding. Find Auntie Zhao to help you sew tonight. Tomorrow, the whole family can wear new clothes. Wang Guixiang froze, looking down at the cloth in her arms. I smiled and added, Annie, it's summer fabric, light and cool. I didn't earn enough for ready-made clothes for everyone, so you'll have to cut and sew them yourself. Will 2 bolts be enough? More than enough, she said instantly. Xiao Yu and I are small, there'll be plenty left over. Just like that, every trace of anger evaporated. She stared at the fresh, clean fabric like she couldn't believe it was real. She hadn't expected me to think of her, or the younger ones. She'd been so ready to scold me for spending wildly, but how could she complain when every coin went to her own family? Her voice softened. You shouldn't have spent so much on us. She hugged the fabric a little tighter against her chest, looking almost shy.
But,
thank you. Next time, don't go spending like this. Just the thought is enough. She meant it and she didn't. I could tell she was moved in a way she hadn't been in a long time. This woman had spent her entire life wearing hand-me-downs, clothes passed from her parents, from her older sister, patched and repatched year after year until they fell apart. The pink outfit she'd given me? That was the only thing close to new she'd ever owned, and even that had been her sister's wedding dress. No one had ever bought fabric specifically for her. Not her husband before he died. Not even Xiaojing, her own son. He gave her his wages. He worked himself half to death. But it had never occurred to him to get his mother a piece of cloth for a new dress. And now her daughter-in-law, one day through the door, had done what nobody else ever thought to do. When I earn more, I told her, I'll buy you even nicer things. She laughed, a real, warm laugh. Then I'll hold you to that. Across the yard, Xiao Jun and Xiao Yu let out quiet sighs of relief. They'd been thrilled about getting new clothes, but too scared to show it while their mother's face was dark. Now that the storm had passed, they crept over and touched the fabric with careful fingers, grinning from ear to ear. New clothes.
for all of them.
For the first time in who knew how long. Meanwhile, over in town, Sulon was having a very different day. What happened in the clothing shop was eating at her. She kept replaying it, me buying a full wedding outfit, fabric for the entire family, spending freely, while she stood there haggling over one cheap veil. The gap between us hit her hard. She tried working on Shenfeng. Feng, I only have this one veil. Won't it look too plain? You saw how much He's family bought. Tomorrow when both families hold their banquets side by side, people will compare. He cut her off. We don't have spare money for new clothes. The ones you're wearing are fine. She backed down instantly, turning soft and teary. I understand. I'm grateful for what I have. I just thought maybe a little rouge for tomorrow? So, I'd look nice in front of your officers and comrades. But if it's too much, forget it. She knew exactly what buttons to push. Make it about his face, his reputation, not her vanity. It worked. His expression softened, and he sighed.
Fine.
Let's go. They went to the rouge shop, but he bought her the cheapest, roughest powder they had. The box was ugly. The color was uneven. Sulan had never used anything this low quality in her life. But she swallowed it and smiled sweetly. Thank you, Feng. You're so good to me. He looked satisfied with himself, like he'd been generous. Then she spotted the ox carts at the street corner. Can we ride back? No. We already overspent on rouge. It's not far, we'll walk. Her smile froze. She'd walked nearly an hour to get to town. Her feet were aching. And he wouldn't spend a few coins on a cart ride? The cheapest veil. The worst rouge.
No cart.
For a moment, she almost wondered why she'd picked this man, but she crushed that thought fast. Shenfeng was a 100-man officer. Young, capable, good-looking, the best catch in the village. Someday he'd rise higher. When he became a 1,000-man commander, she'd be an official's wife. This was just temporary hardship. She smiled again. Whatever you say, Feng. But something behind her eyes had shifted. Back at our place, life was much simpler. We put everything away and sat down for dinner. A pot of wild vegetable dumpling soup. No oil, nothing fancy, just hot and filling. Tomorrow was the big day, so Wang Guixiang kept things easy tonight. After we ate, Xiaozheng stood up, brushed off his clothes, and said, I'm going out. He was through the gate before anyone could ask where. Those long legs of his moved fast. Xiao Jun jumped up right after. I'm going to play with Huzi. And he was gone too. Wang Guixiang grabbed the 2 bolts of fabric and headed for the door. I'm going to Annie Zhao's house. She'll help me cut and sew. Xiao Yu watched the house. Got it, Ma. And just like that, the yard was quiet. Xiao Yu washed dishes, stoked the fire, then settled on a stool by the door to mend clothes, humming softly. I stood in the middle of the yard with nothing to do. The sun was still high, maybe 3 in the afternoon by my old sense of time. But here, dinner was already over. The evening stretched out endlessly ahead of me. Wind blew in from outside the walls, carrying the smell of the mountains. My eyes drifted to the hills in the distance, that long ridge sitting on the horizon like a dusty treasure chest waiting to be opened. My fingers itched. It was still early. The half-slopes weren't far. Maybe one more quick trip wouldn't hurt. I was just thinking about heading back up the mountain when the gate slammed open. Xiao Jun stormed in, face red with anger. I can't believe it. What happened? I asked. The Shin family is throwing a wedding banquet too, tomorrow. Same day as ours. Xiao Yu's mouth dropped.
What?
Nobody said anything about that yesterday. Xiao Jun was pacing. The whole village knows already. They announced it today. They're doing this on purpose, trying to compete with us. And Big Brother and Shenfeng serve under the same commander. When the officers come tomorrow, whose house do they go to? This puts Big Brother in a terrible spot. I frowned slightly. I remembered running into Sulan and Shenfeng at the clothing shop today, buying that red veil. I hadn't thought much of it at the time, but picking the exact same day as us? That had Sulan written all over it. I knew her type from the original owner's memories. Always competing, always needing to be first, always trying to stand above everyone, especially me. She'd resented the original Su He for being put in charge of the mistress's household affairs. She couldn't stand not being number one. Honestly, I didn't care about her. As long as she stayed out of my way and didn't try anything harmful, she was invisible to me. I just wanted to build a good life for my family. I had no energy to waste on petty rivalries. Don't worry about it, I told the two of them calmly. Let them throw their banquet. Nobody said only one family can celebrate on the same day. Xiao Jun knew I was right, but he was still fuming. We said it first. They picked the same day just to mess with us. Exactly. So rude. Xiao Yu agreed. I shrugged it off. We were only setting up 2 tables anyway. We weren't inviting the whole village. The guest lists wouldn't completely overlap. As for the village chief and the military officers, we'd see where they chose to go. Actually, it was a good chance to learn who really supported us. Come on, forget about it. The people who matter will show up. Now help me cut red paper. I dropped my plan to go back up the mountain. Tomorrow was too important to risk anything going wrong. Instead, I pulled out the red paper I'd bought in town, and the 3 of us sat around the table cutting out double happiness characters and window decorations. The yard was plain and bare. A few paper cutouts would at least add some festive color. I know how to do paper cutting. Xiao Yu perked up immediately, and even Xiao Jun settled down and joined in. Scissors clicked. Red paper spread across the table. Slowly, happiness characters and little flower patterns took shape under our hands. The sky darkened. Someone lit the oil lamp in the main room, and its warm yellow glow fell across the red paper and our faces. It felt peaceful, settled. Then, late in the evening, footsteps outside. The gate creaked open. Xiao Jun walked in through the darkness, carrying a large wooden chest on his shoulder. It wasn't fancy, no fine carving or polish, but it was square, solid, and built to last. Big brother, did you get a new chest made? Xiao Jun ran over. Xiao Jun set it down and looked at me. His voice dropped a notch lower than usual. This is for you. For storing your things. He paused, then added quietly, consider it. A bride price. A proper marriage was supposed to come with gifts from the groom's family. But ours was a government-assigned match, and I'd arrived with nothing, not a single belonging to my name. He'd been living rough his whole life, never caring about details. But he understood that a woman was different. So on the very first night he brought me home, he'd gone to the village carpenter and ordered this chest. That's where he'd been sneaking off to the past 2 evenings. I blinked, genuinely surprised. I'd been planning to slowly add furniture to the bare room myself. He'd already thought of it. This is perfect timing, I said, walking over to look at it. I ran my hand across the smooth wood. I really like it. Thank you. Xiao Jun laughed. So that's why Big Brother kept disappearing at night. He was at old Xiao the carpenter's place. Mind your own business, Xiao Jing muttered, but his ears had gone pink. I smiled. A warm feeling spread slowly through my chest. He coughed and asked in a softer voice, "Where do you want it?" "At the foot of the bed. Easy to reach." Okay. We carried it into the room together and set it in place. The room instantly looked a little more like somewhere a person actually lived, instead of an empty shell. I was about to step out when he stopped, reached into his jacket, and pulled out one more thing.
Here.
This too. I looked down. A wooden hairpin. I took it and turned it over my fingers. It was natural wood, unvarnished. But at the tip, someone had carefully carved a tiny rice seedling, delicate little leaves spreading upward. A rice seedling. He the character for grain.
Sue.
It was my name. The carving wasn't elaborate.
No fancy patterns, no intricate flourishes.
Just a simple, clean little plant shaped by hands more used to holding a sword than a chisel. I carved it myself, he said, sounding slightly awkward. It's nothing special. Just use it for now. I traced the tiny seedling with my fingertip, and a smile I couldn't stop spread across my face. I truly liked it, more than anything polished or expensive could have been. A simple gift, made with thought and effort, that meant more to me than he probably realized. It's beautiful. I really love this wedding gift, I said, looking up at him seriously. As long as you like it, he coughed out. I saw something shift in his expression when I called it a wedding gift. He liked that. Back in the main room, I kept turning the wooden pin over in my hands. I wanted to wear it tomorrow, but for a wedding day, plain wood might look too simple. I needed to add something festive. Then I spotted the bag of fabric scraps in the corner, the ones I'd gotten as a bonus from the clothing shop. I dug through the pile and found a bright red strip. This could work. My plan was simple: twist it into a tiny flower and tie it to the pin right next to the carved seedling. A touch of red, without being overdone. Simple plan. Not so simple execution. I wrapped the strip twice and it fell apart. Tried again, crooked and lumpy. Turns out watching craft videos in a past life didn't actually teach my hands anything. I sighed at the messy blob in my fingers. Useless hands. Xiaoyu wandered over. What are you making, sister-in-law? I showed her the strip and explained what I wanted. Her eyes lit up. Let me try. She took the fabric and her fingers moved quick and sure. Years of sewing and mending had given her real skill. A few twists, a few tucks, and suddenly a plump little red flower sat in her palm. Not fancy, but round and full, like a bud about to bloom. Done. She held it up, beaming. That's really pretty, I said, genuinely impressed. You're way better at this than me. She blushed but couldn't hide her pride. I poked a tiny hole in the pinhead with a needle, threaded the flower on, and tied it beside the carved seedling. The red against the natural wood looked perfect, warm and cheerful without being gaudy. You're going to look so beautiful tomorrow, Xiaoyu said, eyes shining. I smiled at the finished pin.
I was satisfied too.
A thought flickered through my mind. Those scraps could be useful for more than just flowers. But that was for later. After the wedding. The gate opened and Wang Guixiang hurried in, arms full of half-cut garments, sweat on her forehead. She'd been at Annie Zhao's house sewing hard. She glanced at the red paper cutouts on the table and nodded approvingly. Then her expression shifted. I just heard at Zhao's place the Shin family is throwing a banquet tomorrow too. Xiao Jun jumped in. Yeah, the whole village knows. They sure picked their moment, she said, clearly annoyed.
But she swallowed it fast.
Can't stop them. Let's focus on making sure our feast is perfect. No mistakes. That stubborn fighting spirit, I was starting to really appreciate it in her. We all sat down together to finalize the menu. I spoke first. The rabbit can stretch into 3 meat dishes. Braise the 2 legs whole. Chop the bones and stew them with wild mushrooms for a soup. Dice the remaining meat and toss it with cucumber, radish, and scallions for a cold rabbit salad. I counted off with my fingers as I went. Add the smoked meat, make an egg dish. That's 5 dishes with meat. Then fill in with vegetable plates, wild greens, long beans, cabbage, and we hit 10 dishes total. A perfect 10 table. Wang Guixiang's eyes went wide. You can get 3 dishes from 1 rabbit? Sounds delicious, Xiaoyu whispered, swallowing hard. I kept going, laying out each dish. Nothing extravagant, but balanced: meat, soup, cold dishes, hot vegetables. We had the pork fat we'd bought to add richness, where the meat ran thin. In times like these, when people hadn't tasted real food in weeks, this spread would feel like a feast. That's it. We're going with this. Wang Guixiang slapped the table, grinning. All her nervousness about the Shun family evaporated. She even looked excited. Then she turned to Xiao Zheng. Have you invited everyone? He nodded. The village chief said yes. A few comrades from camp are coming. He paused. The 1,000-man commander. I can't guarantee. The room went quiet for a beat. I smiled. That's fine. We'll see who shows up. Those who came, we'd welcome warmly. Those who didn't, well, that was useful information too. Wang Guixiang agreed.
Sue, he's right.
Now, everyone get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. The oil lamp flickered, casting soft light across our faces. There was excitement in the air, and underneath it, a thread of nervousness. We all went to bed, but I lay there for a while, eyes open in the dark. Tomorrow, 2 banquets on the same day. 2 families, 2 brides, side by side for the whole village to judge. We'd see who came out on top soon enough. The next morning, the sky was barely light when the noise started. The aunties Wang Guixiang had recruited arrived early, carrying their own woks, cutting boards, and big clay bowls through the gate. Guixiang, what do you need me on? I brought a big pot, perfect for stewing. The yard came alive in seconds. Fire crackling, knives chopping, women laughing, wood splitting. The smell of cooking started to rise. I woke to all of it, and my first clear thought was, today, I'm getting married. Strange feeling. In the apocalypse, I never imagined I'd have a wedding day. But here I was. I got up quickly, straightened my clothes, and headed to the kitchen first. In the corner sat a basin of rice water. I'd asked for it last night. I scooped some up and washed my face carefully. Then I found a loofah gourd, squeezed out a little juice, and patted it onto my skin, pressing gently so the moisture would soak in. Xiaoyu watched me like I was performing magic. You can use loofah water on your face? I smiled. It's great for the skin. The wind and sand out here dry everything out. This helps keep some moisture in. It wasn't as good as proper skincare products, but with what I had, it was the best I could do. I was a Wood Element ability user, and my college major back in my original life had been related to skincare. I knew plenty of formulas. Just no time to make anything right now. Back in the room, I started on my makeup with what little I had. A thin piece of charcoal served as an eyebrow pencil. A few light strokes, and my brows had shape. Then the rouge Xiaozheng had bought me. I dabbed a tiny bit at the corners of my eyes and blended it out, touched some onto my cheeks for color, and last, a light layer on my lips. Then my hair. I gathered it up and twisted it into a neat bun at the back of my head. I reached for the wooden pin, the one Xiaozheng had carved for me, with the little rice seedling and the red cloth flower Xiaoyu had made. I slid it into place. The red flower caught the morning light, bright and pretty against the warm wood. Done, I said, turning to Xiaoyu. How does it look? Her eyes went wide. Beautiful. You look the same, but completely different somehow. I laughed. This is nothing. Once I get proper supplies, it'll be even better. She nodded eagerly, already excited for that day. I changed into the red wedding dress. The fabric wasn't expensive and the style was plain, but the color was right. It wasn't too flashy or too dull, just enough. Against my skin, the red felt warm and soft. I sat on the edge of the bed, smoothed my skirt, and rested my hands on my knees. Now I just had to wait. Xiaoyu sat beside me. Her only job today was to keep me company, and she took it seriously. Our ceremony would be simple, no procession from a bride's family home, since I didn't have one. Xiaozheng and I would walk through the village together, so people could see us, then come back to the yard for the bowing ceremony and the feast. Border customs were relaxed, and with hard times pressing down on everyone, we kept things stripped down. Simple, but dignified. Outside, the kitchen was chaos in the best way. Wang Guixiang was commanding her troops. Save those rabbit legs, they're for braising. Give me the bones, I'll start the stew. Wash those mushrooms properly. She'd memorized every dish I'd planned last night. These women had been cooking for armies of hungry mouths their whole lives. They could follow a recipe from a description and make it work. The moment the oil hit the hot pan, the fragrance poured out of the yard and down the road. Passers-by kept turning their heads. Meanwhile, Xiaozheng and Xiaojun had been busy since dawn. They borrowed a table and benches from neighbors, wiped everything clean, and set up the yard. Then they pasted the red double happiness papers onto the main gate, the hall door, and the bridal room door, and hung the paper-cut window flowers we'd made last night. The shabby little yard suddenly looked festive. When the sun came up fully, the brothers went to change. Xiaojun came out in his new outfit, grinning ear to ear, spinning around to admire himself. This looks great. He couldn't believe he was getting new clothes on his brother's wedding day. Then Xiaozheng stepped out. The deep blue robe fit him perfectly. He was already tall and broad-shouldered, but in proper clothes instead of his usual rough military gear. He looked steady and sharp. Almost handsome, in a severe sort of way. He straightened his collar carefully. I could tell he was treating the outfit like something precious. His first gift from his wife. The women in the yard all looked up. Well, look at Xiaozheng. Almost dashing today. That's a fine set of clothes. What's the saying? A happy man glows. They teased him warmly. Wang Guixiang snuck a glance and gave a private nod of approval. The clothes had been worth every coin. Her usually rough, intimidating son actually looked respectable. Xiaozheng kept his mouth shut and his face straight, but I noticed his eyes drift toward my door. He walked over and knocked gently. Ready one quiet moment. Then the door swung open, and Xiaoyu's bright voice rang out from inside. Here she comes. The bride is ready. Xiao Yu Shout pulled every eye in the yard toward me. The aunties stopped cooking. The neighbors at the gate stood on their toes to peek inside. I stepped out of the room. The red dress wasn't fancy, no gold, no jewels, no silk. But the color was clean and bright, and it fit me well. The little red flower on my wooden hairpin caught the morning light, and I could feel people's eyes land on it and stay. Then they saw my face, just a light touch of makeup, nothing heavy, and the compliments started pouring in. What a lovely bride. That outfit is perfect, festive but not overdone. She looks like a woman who knows how to run a home. Wang Guixian had been holding her breath, worried people might find fault. Now she straightened her back and let pride take over. Her daughter-in-law cleaned up well. Xiao Zheng was standing by the door. He paused when he saw me. It wasn't some dramatic, jaw-dropping moment, more like something in him settled. The nervousness I'd noticed in his eyes melted away, replaced by something quiet and warm. "Let's go," he said, his voice steadier than before. I looked up at him, smiled, and nodded. Okay. We stepped through the gate, and there was Xiao Jun, grinning like a fool. "Sister-in-law, get on the cart." I blinked. A borrowed ox cart was waiting by the door, the wooden bed wiped spotless, the axle freshly greased. And tied to the ox's head was a big red cloth flower, bobbing gently in the morning breeze. I hadn't expected this at all. I looked at Xiao Zheng. He'd said nothing about it, just like the rouge, just like the wooden chest, just like the hairpin. He always did things quietly, then placed them in front of me without a word. "Borrowed it. The village loop is a long walk," he muttered, ears going red. But I understood what he really meant. Even if everything else was simple, he didn't want me walking on my own wedding day. He didn't want me to feel slighted. Something warm spread through my chest, all the way up to my eyes. "It's perfect," I said softly, and gave him the brightest smile I had. Get on, the neighbors started cheering. Kids came running from everywhere, squealing with excitement. The bride's riding the ox cart. I climbed on and settled myself. The red skirt fanned out across the wooden boards like a bright flower. Xiao Zhen walked beside the cart, one hand steady on the rail, the other holding the reins. His steps were careful and even, making sure the cart didn't jostle me. "Here we go," someone hollered. He flicked the reins gently, and we started moving. The village road was narrow, but our little procession filled it with life. People leaned out of doorways, set down their work, crowded at their gates. The Xiao family wedding. They've got an ox cart. That boy really does care about his wife. More of a show than I expected. Not bad at all. The crowd grew as we went. Laughter, cheers, teasing. It all blended into a noisy, happy river of sound flowing through the village. I sat on that cart in my red dress, feeling something I hadn't felt in a very long time.
Joy.
Simple, real joy. On the other side of the village, things were very different at the Shun house. Their yard was a mess. Helpers had come, but nobody quite knew what they were doing. Pots and bowls were borrowed last minute, ingredients scraped together with no real plan. Lu Tsuehua hadn't organized anything properly, and now she was barking orders that only made things worse. "Why isn't everyone here yet? Hurry up, make the fire bigger. Careful with that pot, it's borrowed." She was terrified of being embarrassed, which made her frantic, which made everything sloppier. Inside, Sulan had put on her outfit, still Xin Feng's younger sister's old pink dress, still too tight across the chest. She'd piled on extra powder and rouge to compensate, painting her eyebrows thin and her lips bright red. She kept staring into her bronze mirror, adjusting and readjusting, but nothing felt right. 2 cheap boxes of rouge and no jewelry, that was all she had to work with. Then someone outside called in. "The Xiao bride already left. She's riding an ox cart." Big procession. Su Lan's hand froze. Her comb clattered onto the table. The calm mask she'd been holding cracked. Before she could even process it, Shinfeng walked in. "Hurry up. Time to go." She turned on him, voice low and bitter. "Go? Go how?" Xiao Zhen got Su He an ox cart.
What did you get me?
"I don't even have a real wedding dress. I'm wearing your sister's old clothes. And now I'm supposed to just walk out there with nothing." Shinfeng's face darkened. "Don't start this now. Our family is what it is." Be grateful we're having a banquet at all. Let's go before people laugh at us. Su Lan bit her lip hard, eyes stinging, but there was nothing she could do. She stood up, shot him a resentful glare, and followed him outside.
No cart.
No cheering crowd. Just a handful of neighbors trailing behind them in awkward silence. Su Lan's heavy makeup had smeared slightly from the argument, making her look a little clownish instead of beautiful. 2 wedding processions, moving from opposite ends of the village. And then, right under the old locust tree in the center, both groups met face to face. Everyone went quiet. Everyone's eyes went back and forth between the 2 couples, comparing. Su Lan looked up and saw me sitting on the ox cart. She froze. I could read her face like an open book, shock, disbelief, then something close to pain. In her memory, I'd always been the plain one. Bare face, quiet mouth, dull presence. But today I was different. A little rouge, a little color, the red dress, the wooden pin with its flower. Apparently it all added up to something she wasn't prepared for. She looked down at herself. That borrowed pink dress, faded and tight. Next to my red wedding outfit, it looked like what it was, someone else's old clothes. I could tell what she was feeling. It was as if I was the proper bride, and she was just a concubine being quietly shuffled through a side door. Her nails dug into her palms. For once, she couldn't even manage a cutting remark. The whispers around us weren't subtle. The Xiao bride is beautiful. Who said the Shen bride was the pretty one? The Shen wife looks stiff and overdone. The Xiao wife is so fresh and bright. Look at Su Lan's makeup, caked on like a painted mask, and Xiaozhen got his wife an ox cart. The Shen family couldn't even manage that. 2 brides, 2 very different treatments. Then someone shouted, 2 wedding parties on the same road, double the good luck, and the crowd perked up again. People called out blessings to us. 100-man Xiao, Lady Su, 100 years of happiness. Some said kind words to Su Lan and Shinfeng too, but with noticeably less energy. When both processions started moving again, the villagers had to choose which way to go. Which house are you heading to? I was thinking Shen's. I just came from there, not much to see. Their food isn't even on the fire yet. The Xiao family's got meat dishes. I walked past their yard, and the smell alone. That settled it for most people. The bigger crowd followed our cart, laughing and chatting, eager to see the Xiao family feast, even if they weren't staying to eat. Just getting a look at real meat would be enough to brighten their day. A smaller group trailed after Su Lan and Shinfeng toward their house. The atmosphere around them stayed thin and quiet. Nobody was planning to actually sit down at either banquet uninvited. Grain was too precious for that. People just wanted to soak up some wedding happiness, feel some warmth, catch a bit of good luck. I sat on the gently rocking cart, listening to the laughter around me, and felt something I hadn't felt in years.
Peace.
Real, quiet contentment. I glanced back once and caught sight of Su Lan's figure, stiff, proud, but unmistakably lonely. I let out a small sigh. Then I turned and looked at Xiaozhen walking steadily beside me, one hand on the cart rail, and felt warmth settle deeper in my chest. I'd made the right choice. The ox cart rolled back to our gate as the sun climbed higher. A small crowd had gathered outside, and inside the yard, the borrowed tables and benches were set up neatly. The kitchen was roaring, oil sizzling, meat simmering, the smell drifting out and pulling people in like a spell. Xiaozhen stopped the cart and held the rail steady. "Careful," he said quietly. I stepped down, gathered my skirt, and landed cleanly. The red dress caught every eye at the gate. The bride's home. The cheering started immediately. So pretty. That red dress suits her perfectly. And look at that little wooden hairpin. Never seen anything like it. I kept my smile easy and walked into the yard beside Xiaozhen, calm and unhurried. When people saw I wasn't going to blush or hide, the teasing died down on its own. I nodded hello to the seated guests, then went into the bridal room to rest. Today I was the bride, no chores, no cooking. Just sit and wait for the feast. The first to arrive were Xiaozhen's 2 squad leaders, Zhao Taizhan, a thick, rough-faced man in his 30s who came with his wife and a gift bundle, and Sun Lian, taller and quicker with words, whose young wife kept sneaking curious glances toward my room. These 2 served directly under Xiaozhen. They were glad to be assigned to him. A newly promoted officer with real battle merit meant better prospects for everyone beneath him. They'd brought their wives since a new bride needed female company, but left their children at home. Nobody wanted to look like they came just for free food. Congratulations, 100-man Xiao. Xiao Taizhan boomed the moment he walked in. Sun Lian grinned. Our commander is positively glowing today. Xiao Jing thanked them calmly and told them to sit. No need for formality. He was already carrying himself like a proper officer. I could hear it through the wall. Wang Guixiang came out in her new outfit. The simple summer fabric had been cut and sewn overnight, and it made her look sharper, more alive. She spotted the two wives and swooped in.
Come, come.
Let me take you to meet the new bride. Their eyes lit up, and the three of them headed straight for my room. Then more footsteps at the gate, and a big, booming laugh. I'm not late, am I? That was Lu Dachuan, a fellow 100-man officer from the same camp. Tall, loud, no filter on his mouth. He clapped Xiao Zheng on the shoulder. I turned down the other banquet and came straight here. Behind him walked Su Qingyi, another 100-man officer, leaner and quieter, with sharp eyes. He brought a woman with him, also a government-assigned wife like me, though they'd had no ceremony at all. His family wasn't at the border, so nobody had arranged anything. These four, 2 squad leaders, 2 fellow officers, were Xiao Zheng's real circle. In a camp of 100-man officers under one commander, not everyone got along. Alliances formed, rivalries simmered. These four had chosen Xiao Zheng's side. Their presence today wasn't just about eating, it was a public statement of loyalty. Lu Dachuan dropped onto a bench and announced cheerfully, "Your place is lively. The Shun house is pretty quiet over there." He wasn't exactly whispering. A few people in the yard laughed. Su Qingyi gave him a look. Maybe talk less. Fine, fine. Meanwhile, across the village chief Chen Yuzhen was pacing his house, stuck in a dilemma. Both Xiao Zheng and Xin Feng were newly promoted officers. He couldn't afford to offend either one. He finally decided, go to the Xiao house first, show his face, stay briefly, then head to the Xin house for the actual meal. That way both sides got respect, and nobody could complain. The village clerk, Shen Yukai, had no such conflict. He was from the same clan as Shen Feng's father, so he went straight to the Shun house without hesitation. Supporting his own was expected. And up at headquarters, Commander Li, the 1,000-man officer over both Xiao Zheng and Xin Feng, was in the most awkward spot of all. Both men were his rising stars. He needed them both. And he'd just heard a rumor that the general was looking to promote one of the 5 commanders to a higher position. The last thing he wanted was internal conflict in his unit. In the end, he chose not to attend either banquet. He had his wife prepare 2 gifts and sent his personal guard to deliver them, 1 to each house. As the highest-ranking officer, his absence was acceptable. Nobody could read favoritism into it. Smart move. But I noticed who actually showed up in person and who didn't. In this world, just like in the apocalypse, actions told you everything about where people stood. The food started coming out, and both tables in our yard filled up fast. Wang Guixiang stood as the family elder, beaming, and raised her chopsticks to signal everyone to eat. The dishes kept coming. First, braised rabbit legs, golden brown and glistening, topped with scallions. The smell alone silenced the table. Second, rabbit bone and wild mushroom soup, milky white with tender meat falling apart. 1 sip, and people's eyes closed with satisfaction. Third, cold rabbit salad with cucumber, radish, and scallion, the little meat cubes crispy and soaked in chili oil. Sun Lian took a bite and nodded. This one's made for drinking with. My kind of dish. After the 3 rabbit dishes came garlic shoots with smoked meat, loofah with scrambled eggs. Then the vegetable plates, smashed cucumber, dressed wild greens, stir-fried cabbage, braised radish, wood ear with yam. 10 dishes. Meat and vegetables hot and cold, soup and dry plates. The table was completely covered. Nothing extravagant, but for border life in a drought year, this was extraordinary. The rabbit I'd caught became the star of every conversation. Village Chief Chen had planned to show his face briefly, then leave for the Shun house. But the moment he smelled the food, his feet stopped moving. Then he tasted the rabbit, tender, rich, not dry at all. The eggs were soft and perfect. Even the wild greens had been dressed beautifully. He quietly abandoned his plan. When had he last eaten this well? The Shun house could wait. Maybe he'd stop by after to drop off a gift. He'd heard their food wasn't much to look at anyway. The mood in our yard kept climbing. Zhao Taizhan grabbed a piece of rabbit. This is incredible, Sun Lian agreed. I heard yesterday that the new sister-in-law has real talent, going up the mountain and catching a rabbit. We're lucky men today. Lu Dachuan laughed his big laugh. From now on, let sister-in-law show off her skills more often. We'll all benefit. Even the quiet Su Qingyi gave a rare nod of approval. At the women's table, things were just as warm. The two squad leaders' wives, Su Qingyi's new wife, Wang Guixiang, Xiao Yu and I sat together. The wives kept praising me between bites. A new bride, who can catch a rabbit? That's something. Guixiang, you really hit the jackpot with this one. Wang Guixiang was glowing, so bright she could have lit up the yard. The two aunties who'd helped cook were invited to stay and eat. Their daughters-in-law each took a bowl of food home for the elderly and children waiting there. As they left, one murmured to the other, the Xiao family really did themselves proud today. Plenty of oil and flavor in every dish. Over at the Shun house, the picture was painfully different. They'd set up 2 tables too, but several seats remained empty. The atmosphere was flat, no energy, no warmth. The food on the table told the whole story. A handful of dishes, small portions, barely any meat. 1 plate of scrambled eggs. 1 plate of stir-fried meat, with only a few visible slices. A big bowl of something in the center that had already gone cold and gray. Su Lan stood by the door, eyes drifting to the gate again and again. Where is everyone? The village chief should be here by now. The only notable guest who'd come was Clerk Shin Yukai, a minor local official from Xin Feng's own clan, plus Xin Feng's 2 squad leaders. That was it. Then Xin Feng's younger brother ran in from outside. Don't bother waiting. The Xiao house is already eating. They've got 4 meat dishes. Silence hit the table like a rock. Everyone glanced down at their own plates. 6 dishes, lukewarm, watery. The lone meat plate scattered with scraps, so thin you could see through them. Nothing to stir the appetite. Nothing to be proud of. Su Lan's smile had frozen solid. She'd assumed that holding banquets on the same day would at least put them on equal footing. But her mother-in-law had been so stingy that the food was barely fit for servants. Back at the minister's manor, even the lowest-ranking help wouldn't have touched plates like these. And this was supposed to impress guests? She didn't need to go look. She already knew the Shin family had become a joke. Out on the village road, people who'd been heading toward the Shun house started slowing down. You smell that? That's coming from the Xiao place, right? Someone came rushing past, excited. The Xiao feast is amazing. 4 meat dishes. I'm going home to grab my breakfast and eat it outside their gate. The group exchanged looks, then their feet drifted toward our yard without anyone deciding to. The crowd outside our gate kept growing. Adults stood watching, some squatted by the wall, and children pressed their faces close, staring at the food with wide, hungry eyes. I want meat too. Shush, nobody invited you. The mothers scolded their kids, but their own eyes never left the yard either. It was meat. In times like these, who wouldn't want some?